Hello, Suresh. Am I audible? My view is okay.
Yes, madam.
Thank you.
Yes, madam.
Chandrika madam, good evening. Good evening,
Good
I'm
morning,
Mahanti
sir.
speaking.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. Okay, so nice meeting you.
Evening.
Okay.
Good evening, madam.
Good evening, madam.
This call is
Hello? 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 Hello?
Sir, Murthy sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir,
yes, yes.
bhajan
Okay.
start pallama sir.
Yeah. Yeah, you can start the bhajan. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I can start.
Yeah.
yeah.
You are referring to me.
Introduction கொடுக்குறீங்களா sir?
Shall I start?
No, yeah. What about that Dastagiri? Professor Dastagiri? Ghulam Dastagiri?
Yes, sir. I'm
Yeah,
here.
you do it according to your own program.
Sir, first, bhajan. First,
Yeah,
we can
do
start
it.
with bhajan.
Okay.
First, bhajan, sir.
Okay.
ఎవరికో కాల్ చేశారు కదా, వాడు కాల్ బ్యాక్ చేశారు.
అదే ఆన్లైన్ లో ఉన్నాను చెప్పండి.
निश्चल राखे धन धन जननी तेनी रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने करी. समदृष्टि ने तृष्णा त्यागी समदृष्टि ने तृष्णा त्यागी पर स्त्री जी ने मात रे पर स्त्री जी ने मात रे जे थकी असत्य न बोले जीवा थकी असत्य न बोले पर धन न बजाले हाथ रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कही.
बीने कपट रहित छे
काम क्रोध निवार्या रे
काम क्रोध निवार्या रे
भणे नर संयतनो दर्शन करता भणे नर संयतनो दर्शन करता
कुल को तेरे तारा रे
Gandhi's philosophy of life provides the idea of sustainable development as deeply related with nature and ecosystem, where economy, ecology, and spirituality are interrelated as economy of environment. Mahatma Gandhi's teachings and actions enable us to critically reflect upon the current crisis of values and environmental concerns. Disciplined and compassionate, we need to remember him not only through his ideals, but his vision of sustainable development. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to welcome one and all to the international webinar on Gandhian Discourse and Sustainable Development, a Sesquicentennial Panorama. Organized by the Department of Sociology, School of Social Sciences and International Studies, Planetary University, in collaboration with Gandhi King Foundation as a mark of celebration of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to one and all joining us today for this inaugural session as the gateway to the initiation of the two-day webinar from across the country and across the globe. Our chief guest for today is Professor Gurmeet Singh, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Pondicherry University. I would now like to request one and all to kindly raise for the university anthem.
புதுவை புதுவை புதுமையே போற்றுவோம் புதுவை பல்கலைக்கழகமே உனை வாழ்த்துவோம் வங்க கடலலை தாளாட்டும் ஞான சூரியன் உதிக்கும் இடம்
இது எங்கள் புதுநெறி காட்டும் உலகம் எந்நாளும் அறிவு தேடல் தொடரும் அறிவூற்றை பொழியும் ஆசிரியர் அதில் தினமும் நனையும் மாணவர்கள்
இதிலன்று புதுவை பல்கலைக்கழகம் அறிவின் தாகம் கனியும் சோலை அகில போற்றும் கல்வி சாலை மனித வளமே என்று முயல புனித சேவை தொடருதே பல்கலைக்கழகம் என்றும் வளர்ந்திட நாமும் வழிபடுவோம் கல்வி சேவைகள் யாவும் காலமும் தொடர்ந்திட நாடும் வேண்டிடுவோம் புதுவை புதுவை புதுமையே போற்றுவோம்
புதுவை பல்கலைக்கழகமே உன்னை வாழ்த்துவோம்.
I would now like to request our Honorable Dean, Professor P. Murthy, and Nodal Officer, 150th Birth Anniversary Celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi, Pondicherry University, to kindly give the special address for today.
Good evening, all friends. This is Murthy, Deputy Director, Vivekananda Institute of Human Excellence, Ramakrishna, Hyderabad. I am very happy to participate in the 150.
Hello.
150. Hello?
Sir, this is, excuse me. So may I request Professor Mohanty to address the gathering? Welcome the gathering, please.
Me, is it me or not?
No. This is Professor Mohanty. Please, Professor, please welcome the gathering, sir.
Oh, I see. My time will come later, I think. My time will come later. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Dastagir. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay. So, good evening, everybody. Respected dignitaries and esteemed resource persons and participants of this webinar, colleagues from my department and other departments of our university, research scholar, and friends. I am really to see the overwhelming response to our international webinar, Gandhian Discourse Development, a Sesquicentennial Panorama, which is being organized by our department in collaboration with the King Foundation as a part of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Our school has already a series of webinars in the last few months on various aspects of Gandhi and Gandhian studies. This particular program is unique because of two important reasons. First one is the kind of theme, which is identified. So the secondly, the wide range of issues covered and the resource for being involved. So I must congratulate Dastagir for this webinar, organizing this webinar in a kind of very systematic and organized manner. So I will not take much time. I have been told that I have to be very specific. We have limited time. So I will just say very few words. All of you know that the rapid economic development or transformation which began revolution in Europe, the development started systematically only after the Second World War. And if you see the whole trajectory of the development discourse, the discourse on sustainable development figured almost half a century after the commencement or since the commencement of this development discourse, particularly from late 80s and particularly from the year 1987 following the World Commission on Environment which was released in 1987, and this happened notwithstanding the fact that conceptualized the idea of sustainable in this end of the 19th century, he had already advocated and already explained about the whole idea of sustainable development. In fact, the book was a kind of manifesto of sustainable development, and whole Gandhian economy and polity was the premise on the idea of sustainable development and the harmonious with ecology, just peaceful coexistence of cultures and civilizations. However, this idea of kind of ideas which were in the Swaraj was not explored seriously by the Gandhian scholars, the scholars in studies, or the development kind of the scholars in development studies. Long time now, only of late we started recognizing only after 1980s, late 80s. And entire this on development was biased, heavily biased in favor of Western model, the classical economist, which says development in terms of efficiency, so that was the kind of criteria conceptual. The relationship between nature, mankind, ecology, and peaceful sense when this triumph of capital became evident and enable, and the entire world started embracing. So at time came into being, started realizing its impact on environment, on the degree of human, and on various aspects, realizing the importance of sustainable development, and which already focus. And the discourse on Gandhian studies, did not incorporate or did not highlight the ideas of Gandhi on development, and the development experts, as I told you, led by these Western scholars, economists, and the neoclassical and classical economists at that school, they completely dominated, bypassed the Gandhian. So now we are in a stage where Gandhi's ideas or Gandhian ideas and economics more relevant what it was before. Now the scenario, the COVID pandemic situation is actually reminding us about this, the relevance of to revisit this discourse and development, and the existing kind of loopholes and discourse need to be in the light of the idea in Swaraj and subsequent kind of interpretation, subsequent kind of work done by Gandhian scholars. So this webinar, which is being organized by Professor Dastagir, will address some of these key issues on such development and how Gandhians and Gandhian economics or polity is being as a kind of a framework explaining their development scenario. I'm sure many of these key issues will be addressed by this seminar. I will not spend more time with this. I will pleasant duty of welcoming our guest, which is a kind of great privilege. First of all, I would like to welcome Professor Gurmeet Singh, the Vice Chancellor of our university. We are extremely happy and privileged to our chief guest. He is not only a scholar and educationist, he is one of the finest in. And ever since he joined this university, we have experienced a new kind of academic ambience and vibrance in the university. And I have been observing him. He has a keen interest, though he is a man from science discipline, interest in social science subjects, and he encouraging all of us to organize seminars, webinars, and engage in kind of discussion and debate. That telling us, and we are very happy that he is present with us here. And on behalf of the Department of Sociology, warm welcome to you, sir. Professor Director of Studies, Educational Innovation and Rural Reconstruction is the Pro Vice Chancellor of our university. He is the senior-most professor in our university and well-known geologist. Hard, along with our Vice Chancellor, to make this university as a center of excellence. Really honored to have you, sir, to preside over this function. And on behalf of the Department of Sociology, I extend a very hearty welcome to you, sir. Then I would welcome Prasad Pali, speaker of this webinar. On behalf of Planetary University and Department of Sociology, I extend a very warm and hearty welcome to you, sir. Then we have with us a prominent and distinguished scholar on Gandhian studies, Professor Paul Bueno de Mesquite, the director of Center for National Violences from the University of Rhode Island. No other person would be better than him to deliver the keynote address for this. I am extremely happy that valuable time to be this occasion and deliver the keynote address. On behalf of the Planetary University and the Department of Sociology, I extend a very special and hearty welcome to you, sir. I extend a special welcome to our Dean and my close friend, Professor Rio behind this screen, and he is in fact instrumental in organizing this seminar. I warm welcome Professor Chandrika and Dr. Iftikhar Alam, and my welcome to Professor K. Ghulam Dastagir, who is the chief organizing person of this entire event. He has been working very hard for the last to bring the webinar to the present state. And I must say, though he's a systematic person, and he's a kind of source of support, great source of support and strength. Things, and I am happy that he organized this seminar. Brought kind of credit. I'm really happy that he is organized seminar in a kind of a manner which is expected. All the participants and resource persons, Planetary University, and students, one and all. I wish your presence would not only be satisfying, be meaningful, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor B.B. Mohanty, sir, Professor and Head, Department of Sociology, Pondicherry University, for the welcome address. I would now like to invite Professor P. Murthy, Dean, School of Social Sciences and International Studies, for the special address.
This Ghulam Dastagiri. This Ghulam Dastagiri has to present. Hello. Professor Ghulam Dastagiri. Hello, Professor Ghulam Dastagir. Hello. Professor Ghulamji.
Sir, Ghulam Dastagir, sir, unmute and speak, sir.
No, he has to unmute and speak. He has to speak on scope of the seminar. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, you speak on.
Yes, I am audible.
You have to speak on scope of the seminar.
Sir,
Scope of the seminar by Ghulam Dastagir.
I would like to welcome Dr. K. Ghulam Dastagir, Professor and Webinar Convener, Department of Sociology, Pondicherry University, to speak about the scope of the webinar.
Ghulam Dastagir. Hello. Ghulam Dastagir. Professor Ghulam Dastagir.
Ghulam sir, please unmute. Yes, unmute and speak, sir.
Ghulam sir.
I'm audible now?
I think
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah.
kindly proceed. Internet issue here. There. Sir, can I speak?
Yes, speak, man.
Respected,
speak.
Respected Vice Chancellor, sir, respected Dean, School of Social Sciences, respected Head of the Department of Sociology, Professor Mohanty, respected Director, respected professors, colleagues, my dear friends, and my dear students. It gives me immense pleasure to join this webinar, and I am thankful to our Dean, School of Social Sciences, Professor Murthy, and the Head of the Department of Sociology, Professor Mohanty, for entrusting this important responsibility to me, and I am very much thankful to them. And I'm also thankful to very particularly my co-conveners, Dr. Iftikhar Alam and Dr. Suresh, for their valuable support in this program. As Professor Mohanty rightly pointed out, the discourse on development has posed a dialectics, not only in terms of debates and discussions, but in reality also, it has thrown several challenges that we have started witnessing in the increasing element of risk, which has been coined by sociologists as the global risk society. It was Ulrich Beck who proposed this idea of understanding risk, and he conceptualized, encapsulate all the aspects of risk that is being encountered by the modern and contemporary society as the risk society, which is now being called as the global risk society in which we are living. The global risk society poses several challenges, including climate change, global warming, and various aspects of disturbances that we are
It's not audible. It is not audible.
Sir, Murthy sir, நீங்க lead பண்ணுங்க sir.
No, why it is not audible? I don't know.
The
Hello?
idea of this global risk society has been conceptualized by Giddens as well. He speaks about the presence of manufactured risks. Keeping all this in view, we have thought of bringing the discourse of Gandhi here to discuss the contemporary aspects of development and the recent elements that have been happening about what we call it as the global risk society. For that, what we thought is perhaps the linkage between the discourse of sustainable development and the linkage to the Gandhian ideas could be more well perceived, appropriately perceived through sociological insights. Keeping that in view, we have launched this webinar to think about and deliberate as to how Gandhian discourse has been what we call it as the social reflexivity. Though Gandhi had lived about, has lived about 75 years ago, what we have seen in his writing, especially as we see in the Hind Swaraj, has been pointing out to the elements of environmental protection. He was very particularly against Western forms of development, and he was very particularly critical about industrialism. And he also had emphasized on self-restraint and the linkage between ends and means. By keeping all this in view, what we see in the Gandhian idea is that what the recent sociologists speak about, social reflexivity or reflexive modernization, has been proposed by Gandhiji 100 years ago, a century ago. He should be recognized as one of the very early environmentalists in the entire globe. In fact, when many a time we think that Gandhi has spoken about the achievement of independence, which he also demonstrated to the entire world, how it could be succeeded through ahimsa and non-violence. When he explained the rationale for his attempt for getting independence, Mahatma Gandhiji wrote that he wants independence not just because the Britishers should go, but it is because Britishers have been exploiting the Indian natural setting. And this exploitation, Gandhiji considered as an element of himsa and an element of violence. So Gandhiji acknowledged this fact that any form of exploitation, depletion, denudation, or despoliation or pollution of the environment is equivalent to violence, and he propagated non-violence. That is why most of the environmental movements we see not only adopted the content of Gandhian thinking, but also the strategies that Gandhiji proposed. Environmentalism, not only in India and across the world, has been guided by Gandhian principles. And keeping all this in view, what we have thought of as this international conference is to deliberate upon Gandhian thinking in few sessions, important sessions, where resource persons will be deliberating on the Gandhian idea of sustainable development, Gandhi and development dialectics, and also we will talk about how Gandhian discourse is interfacing with the sustainable development goals, such as no poverty, zero hunger, good health, quality of education, gender equality, clean water, air and environment, and sustainable communities and cities, and leaving nobody behind in development process. These sustainable development goals that have been proposed in 2015 and are to be achieved till 2030 are greatly a reflection of Gandhian discourse. With this, I would like to acknowledge the participation of several delegates across, not only in India, across the world, who have joined this international webinar. And the resource persons are also drawn not only across this country, but also across the world. And I would like to acknowledge the collaboration by Professor Prasad of Gandhi King Foundation in this endeavor. With this, I would like to extend a very warm welcome and a very fruitful deliberation and discussion in this webinar. Thank you.
Dastanir sir, do we have the special address now?
Yes.
So I would like
Yes.
to welcome Professor Murthy for the special address today.
Yes, thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're
Yes.
audible.
Yeah, good evening to all of you. I'm personally happy as Dean of the School of Social Sciences and International Studies. And my colleagues from Sociology, they agreed to conduct seminar, and we have done maximum work to conduct this seminar. And the topic given by Sociology Department is highly appreciable. The first site I have seen, the sustainable development is an important agenda of the world that has to be addressed very, very carefully. This is the subject connected with political science, sociology, and many other social science related subjects. It is an interdisciplinary subject. Therefore, we have got people from different parts of the world. We have got USA here, South Africa here, Sri Lanka, and some country, Nepalese from Kathmandu. We have got people here, and we have got connectivity from various parts of India. You see, India, Jain is there, and Jamia Millia is there, and you have got University of Pardania, all the universities scholars, and we've got two connectivity here. You see, I'm giving you the outline of this particular webinar. Two connectivity. You have got one connectivity through Google platform, another one is connected with YouTube. I'm happy to have so many participants, participating in this. As a dean of the school, the assignment given to me in 2018, October 2nd, was the beginning of the day when we started the journey for glorifying the principles of Mahatma Gandhi in different subject areas. And as a nodal officer of this particular event, I felt like inviting all the departments to participate so as to attract youngsters, young students, to have them exposed to the Gandhian principles. What is important is to attract more and more youngsters to understand about Gandhian philosophy and Gandhian workable principles. Most of the philosophy Gandhiji experimented is workable. That is more important to understand. Gandhiji never propounded anything unworkable. All workable philosophical movings, workable principle settings he created. So Gandhiji was understood, misunderstood, his principle used, abused, misused. The planners of economy of the world community encountered so many ups and downs in economic planning. Nobody could have sustainable economic planning that went in support of growth and development in the constant mode. Very, very important. The growth is called a constant mode growth, which has to go hand in hand with humanity and nature. The development has to have harmony between nature and humankind. What is missing today is that relationship building between nature and human beings are missing. The modernization process taken in the front line, morality put in the back seat. Morality is not there. So the development that you are telling is not really development. It sometimes goes against the human life settings. This is what we are facing today. We are facing the arena, Corona arena. You can say Corona is a kind of era created. The timeline, if you just look at Corona, cannot be forgotten. 100 years after, we are having a greatest challenge faced by invisible device, the invisible germ that killed already 10 lakhs people nearly. The entire globe is facing greatest danger. The life is threatened. Therefore, we are sitting in the virtual meeting. The technology is supposed to be utilized in a sustainable manner to promote human life setting. We are now utilizing the technology for promoting our academic excellence by connecting ourselves with different parts of the world. Very unimaginable technology, but if it is used properly, it is going to be sustainable. If it is not used properly, it is going to hit the humanity. This is a kind of message that Mahatma Gandhi predicted those days. Therefore, he made a point very clearly what kind of development you need. He highlighted 4 important points. He said, You have to, of course, go by denying the modernization process. Never he went against machines. Simply many people understand that Gandhiji was against machine. It is not like that. The machine should not replace letting of individuals. Many felt that the machine can facilitate the modern community. But what is happening today, you understand. The man life setting is completely challenged by modernizations. The Western model of development could not help. The market economy could not help. The American model could not work. That is the reason why a great scholar talked about the sustainable economic model. Kumarappa, I used to always recall his contributions on economy. The economy of permanence he talked about. So denying the modernization is not simply easy, but Gandhiji noted with point that denying modernization is very, very important. And that is the point that he made as first and foremost principles in the sustainable development process of Gandhian order. The second important point that Gandhiji propounded is the local self-sufficiency. Very important. Local self-sufficiency. These are the four pillars with which Gandhiji erected Hind Swaraj book, the 1900 book, unchallengeable contribution of Mahatma Gandhi. It challenged the capital of Marx, Karl Marx, the highest selling book in this world, next to Capital. Now, Capital is replaced. Das Kapital I am referring to. The second important point has to be understood. Local self-sufficiency means whatever you need, you have to produce accordingly. You have to be a laborer, direct labor system. Very important point, Gandhiji. The man who is not laboring, he has no right to enjoy the fruit of your daily life. That means you have to contribute to your labor. That is local self-sufficiency, other concept he highlighted. And just highlighting because it's sustainable development concept that emerged in 1990s. After the collapse of Soviet Union only, this concept started working. 1992 only, the United Nations given directions for the entire world to work on sustainable development. It's a very important point. Therefore, we are now going to entertain ourselves in sustainable development concept, United Nations goals, and the scholarship, the principles propounded by many scholars. Take the case of the Western economist and come down to understand about the J.C. Kumarappa or Raja Chellaya of Indian economist. We are not talking about all this ground reality-based economists of this world. We talk about Roos, Krugman, or many economists from Western side we talk about. But unfortunately, our real economists are not highlighted in the classes of Indian universities or the world universities. Gandhiji referred, the second point is a very important point. Local self-sufficiency based learning, economic construction, very important to be proliferated among younger communities world. Americans have to understand. America is the country investing more on Gandhian studies. Now they are more and more extracting Gandhian principles for understanding about their mistakes. The Western model is getting rectified. The globalization model is always relying on localization model of various kinds of Mahatma Gandhi's principles. And therefore, he talked about localization, local self-sufficiency, the next pillar. The third important pillar Mahatma Gandhi highlighted was simple life. Simple lifestyle one has to adopt. You may talk of very big things, but if you are not simple in your lifestyle, you are against the real development process. The simplicity is the best economic order. Mahatma always highlights in Hind Swaraj, simplicity is the best model of development. If you restrict your wants, you will not invite problems. Restricting wants also art. It is not easy to restrict wants. That is where we are now entering. The wants are boomerang, flourishing. Wants creating wants. Demand creates demands. More demands created. The more that you are creating demands, the more that you are creating problems in this world. What is happening today is that economists, they call it a creative economic style, a creative economic model. Demand has to create other demand. Demand has to create yet another demand. So demand structure has to be erected dynamically as according to Western order, but that never worked favorably. The fourth important point that Mahatma highlighted in Hind Swaraj is very important point, that is sensitivity to the uses of environment. Environment friendliness, Mahatma highlights environmental friendliness. Nobody highlighted the way that Mahatma Gandhi highlighted. He practiced also environmental friendliness. These are the four important pillars that Mahatma constructed, erected for contributing a greatest book in this world called Hind Swaraj. 1908 contribution cannot be denied by the world community. You have got so many Gandhian scholars here. There are scholars from Martin Luther King's foundations. There are scholars from Jamia Millia. There are scholars from Pradenia, Sri Lanka. They are all well-versed scholars working on these Gandhian principles. And you've got scholars squarely working on non-violence from Germany. The man who is replacing the American, he could not come, South African. And he is coming today, Bishop, and he is going to speak on this. I'm happy to see all these luminaries here, including my Vice Chancellor. As Professor Mohanty pointed out, Vice Chancellor is not simply a scientist. He's the greatest social scientist also. He recognized him as the greatest social scientist. With all this kind of outlining, I feel as an economy of the world. We have to find out alternative so that the world economic Gandhian principle people say. Nelson Mandela called 2019 itself, he said. 1988 itself, he said that the 21st century is a Gandhian century. So we are now living in a Gandhian century. So it's a very important century for us. And most of the world nations are really thinking about Gandhian principles. Therefore, we have constructed UN MDG, UN SDG. All these programs are a replica of Gandhian model, I would say. Most of the principles that you are incorporating into the United Nations Millennium Development Goal and UN Sustainable Development Goal, all are contribution of Mahatma Gandhiji, Rural Reconstruction Program. That is what the great man Abdul Kalam used to highlight once. PRA model, he said, providing urban amenities in rural areas. How many of us try to provide betterment for the rural people now? The people living in rural settings all over the world. The all over the world model is workable. The restricted model will never work. What happened to communism like that? Gandhiji imagined the welfare model, socialism model, welfare of all model. He wanted to promote welfare of all model in a simplistic manner, simple style-based manner. So these are all the things that we have to highlight in the deliberations and try to influence the youngsters so that the youngsters can more and more read on Gandhiji. The principles with which that we started is that more and more reading has to be developed in Gandhian studies area. The readers, they should read more and more on this area. Reading habit has to be increased on Gandhiji. Without reading Gandhiji deeply, nobody can criticize Gandhiji. We have no right to criticize Gandhiji, anyone for the matter. So therefore, the reading habit has to be developed among youngsters. You've got great scholars, Professor Prasad from Gandhi King Foundation and Martin Luther, foundations from USA and from Pradenia. My friend professor has come here, a non-violence professor from America has come. I'm happy that all these professors can have a great deliberations and give great directions for the world community. We have got great, stress today in this world, economic stress. Even the economic stress has become so intensified due to Corona, due to COVID-19. That has to be addressed carefully. Who has to address? You and me. We are the intellectuals. We have to address. Therefore, we have even the difficult time we are organizing such kind of international conference. It's not easy. So commitment is matter, your hard work is matter, your loyalty is matter. All this drawback with which we are doing it. I'm happy that sociology department agreed for such a great organization of this conference. As a nodal officer, I feel that this conference has to be so successful. It has to give some light for the entire economic world order. The economic world order, world economic order has to be changed. India tried in the name of New International Economic Order in the 1970s. We could not attain it. Globalization won over. The market economy won over. The force-based economy won over. The love-based economy. Which economy? The decentralization-based. The responsibility-based economy. The human responsibility-based economy that we are looking for to have a breakthrough in this crisis-prone world of today. With this, I appreciate the organizers. I appreciate my Vice Chancellor who supported us in all aspects. Without him, we are nothing. It is he who is behind us. He is the force behind us. The force is working on us. So we are taking endowment. Force not there, endowment cannot be taken. So he is the greatest supporter. He provided lots of infrastructural facilities, even in the crisis period. Our university is the leading universities in this world, I would say. Because in various areas we are surpassing what we have been doing. The interaction that we are making with the younger generation also catching up like anything. We are the universities involved seriously in classroom teaching. Go to any universities in this world. The classroom teaching is Pondicherry University is very different. I am proud to say all these things because we are senior people. We should share very openly so that we can come out with some solutions for, giving some, alternatives for addressing the existing solutions. Whether it is economic solution or any solutions, they are all intertwining. That means connected. Sustainable development is a connected concept. That is why I started saying that it is a politically conscious concept, economically conscious, socially conscious concept. All the crises created by social area. It is all the replica of social expression or say religious expression. Conflicts are all religious expression, social expression. Therefore, the conflict resolution way we have to go and provide solutions. With this, I don't want to stretch more. I think that the starting is a great goal. Our Vice Chancellor, if he is there, he can motivate us. And he said he will come at any time and join us. If he is available here, he may give a great fillip for us, and so that we can go for the technical session in which even I am chairing, and another person from Germany is a great professor. He is going to speak in the first technical session. I think our Gurmeet Singh sir is available. He can have interaction with our participants as a chief guest. He is our chief guest actually. He told me that he will come at any time and he'll interact with the participants in an open way. He is known for transparency, open man. A simple man. He is also a simple man. And his appearance will definitely motivate all the youngsters here and participants hailing from different parts of the world. That is more important. We are having cultural complexity here. Pluralism is working. Arnold Toynbee once told, Indian civilization can protect all the civilization of the world. Beautifully he said. Arnold Toynbee, a greatest scholar, historian, he said once, without the civilization of India, no one can protect humanity of this world. We are at this stage now. India is a responsible country. We have to play a positive role to take all the humanity together, help each other. Many people are recognizing us. Yeah, I am proud to say that. So I am happy that our Vice Chancellor is here. We can interact, and it is now the time to hand over this thing. Dastagir. Professor Dastagir. Hello. Ganapati?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Take care. Take care.
Thank you, Professor Murthy, for the special address. I would now like to welcome Professor Prasad Golanapalli, Gandhi King Foundation, Hyderabad, for the inaugural address.
Namaskar. Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Pondicherry University. Professor P. Murthy, Dean and Nodal Officer for Gandhi 150 Jayanti celebrations. Professor B.B. Mohanty, Head of the Department of Sociology, under whose aegis this program is being organized. Professor Olander, the webinar coordinator, who made a wonderful speech. In fact, it was very, very inspiring, Dastigirji. I thank you and compliment you for that. Then Professor Balakrishnan, Director of SCI and RR. Then Paul Di from University of Rhode Island, my great friend who is available here. He is going to speak and I am very keenly looking forward to listening to him. Then Christian Bottol from Germany, from the Gandhi Information Center, who has a wonderful, wonderful collection of Gandhi material and exhibitions which he does all over the world. And I'm also seeing Professor Girishwar Mishraji in the group, who was the Vice Chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi International Hindi University at Wardha, with whom I had the privilege of working. And all the friends who are participating in this meeting, I say once again, a very happy good evening. I first of all congratulate the University of Pondicherry for organizing this very important webinar on sustainable development. That is one part. The other part is the Gandhian discourse. And how do we combine these two things? When we look at sustainable development models, we find the United Nations declared the 17 sustainable development goals to be achieved by 2030. In fact, if you very carefully have a look at all of them, they are nothing but the prescriptions given by Mahatma Gandhi. And Professor Murthy has emphasized that Gandhi's contribution in the form of Hindu Swaraj had been something which is prophetical. Do you know that in Hindu Swaraj, Gandhi said he did talk about segregation. He talked about railways spread plague, Gandhi said in Hindu Swaraj. So today we are talking about the same thing. We stopped the railways, stopped the public transport, the flights and everything. So Gandhi was very prophetic. So I was very happy when I heard Professor Murthy talking and bringing into the discussion and the discourse the Hindu Swaraj, which is a fundamental document where Gandhi declared his worldview. Now, when we talk about sustainable development, what exactly does it mean and how Gandhi talked about sustainability? And I was told by my friends from the scientific community that this earth has come into existence some 4.5 billion years ago. Such a long time span we have for the earth, and we the human beings that come onto this planet earth, maybe we live for 50 years or 60 or even 100 years at the most. Maybe some people very exceptionally live a little more than that. But whatever it is, that span of time that the human being has on this planet is such an abysmally low, just like a spark out of this whole gamut of planetary life. So I would like to humbly place before all of you that we come on this planet Earth as guests. But we have not understood the role of a guest. When the University of Pondicherry invites me to come and give a talk, I should be very humble. When they want me to sit here, I should sit there. When they say start speaking, I should speak. So I should follow the instructions given by the host. I cannot be a decision maker for everything. But similarly, when we look at the mankind, we are not behaving like guests on the planet Earth, but we are behaving like masters. We are misbehaving with this planet Earth. And as Gandhi said, this world or this planet Earth has enough to meet the needs of everybody, but not the greed of any one single person. So we can live, and this whole earth has enough for all of us. Now look at the birds, look at the animals. They get up in the morning, they go in search of food. Do they store food? Like human beings, we just always do this kind of black marketing, lot of accumulation we do. The desire for unlimited accumulation, which again Professor Murthy was talking about. Gandhi said in Hind Swaraj, mind is a restless bird. If one want is satisfied, another will take its place and still it remains unsatisfied. And there it also said, Professor Murthy was again talking about this local self-sufficiency, that is the Swaraj concept or Swadeshi concept. And what I need, I should use the resources which are locally available. Gandhi, when he was to construct his Bapu Kuti in Sevagram Ashram, he gave a budget of just 100 rupees to build his kuti where he wanted to live. And he said, you should bring the material for construction only from 10-kilometer radius. Don't bring anything beyond the 10 kilometers. It is the concept of Swadeshi, the local economy, mutual dependence. It is there when we have the local economy, we will have the sustainability. So basically, when we talk about sustainability, we should think in terms of future. We have borrowed this earth from the posterity. We have to return it to the future generations, at least in the same shape as we have inherited, or we have borrowed from the future generations. And if you have borrowed money from anybody, you should return that along with interest. But here you are not paying the interest, but in fact even you are depleting the capital itself. Therefore, the question of sustainability we have not taken seriously, and there is a lot of threat for us. Now, I would like to bring in the example of animals. In fact, the best model of sustainability, I feel we should learn from the animals. Once in America, in Kenosha City in Wisconsin, there was a program on the American animal heroes. And they invited me as a speaker. And on the invitation card where my name was placed, they were given a Gandhi's quotation. The moral measure of a nation can be seen how they treat their animals. What a beautiful quote by Gandhi. So where I said that we are saluting the animals because they have served the nation, but we should respect the animals, we should honor the animals because they're animals. As animals, they are superior to human beings. How? Animals do not speak lies. Animals do not cheat others. Animals do not insult others. Animals do not destroy the environment. It's only the man who does. Therefore, when we compare animals' life, they are extremely within the purview and within the principles of nature. They never destroy the nature, they never transgress the nature. Whereas it is a human being who does so many things because of which we find climate change, the sea level rising, and the temperatures are rising, extinction of species, and today what we are having in the form of COVID. Is there also not a challenge to sustainability? It is the continuous misadministration, interference with the nature, nature's laws that have resulted in a kind of COVID now. And Gandhi also talked about it when he said, when you mess with the nature, nature will speak in a mysterious way, he said. That's what we do not know what is happening to us. The kind of COVID, you can't come out, we are always under restrictions, you are confined to home. Why do we have this kind of an international webinar now? Why was it not possible to have a physical program in University of Pondicherry, which has a beautiful campus? So the point is that we are not confined to our own homes. We are in cages rather. Therefore, it is a very solid proof that we are not contributing the sustainable environment, sustainable world, sustainable human beings. Now, the Gandhian prescription, Gandhian discourse, if I understand, starts with equality. Because Gandhi's essential principle is Sarvodaya, the welfare of all, everybody's enlightenment. So Gandhi talked about welfare of all human beings, and the entire mankind should be happy. And it is the welfare of the human beings means all human beings are equal. If somebody is superior, somebody is inferior, there cannot be welfare of all. So we are all equal by birth, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, language, region, gender, education, wealth, whatever it is, all human beings are equal because I have not chosen my own birth. Therefore, the essential principle of Sarvodaya is equality of all people. All of human beings are born equal. And then it is not only the welfare of human beings, but also the welfare of the subhuman world and even the non-living world. So when I believe and I am committed to the concept of Sarvodaya, the question is, how do I live? How do I conduct myself with my neighbors, with fellow human beings, with the subhuman world, with animals, birds, how do I behave? And in the non-living world, what should be my relationship? So all these issues put together, Gandhi has put it as Swaraj, self-rule, self-control, control the mind, control the passions, passions of greed, passions of superiority, passions of exploitation, because all the wrong things start with the human mind. Therefore, Gandhi has given a mechanism of the 11 vows. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Asangraha, Sharira Shrama, Aswada, Sarvatra Bhayavarjana, Sarvadharme Samanatvi, Swadeshi Sparsha Bhavana. The 11 principles, how to make a human being a good human being and a good citizen. So the question of sustainability comes as to what is the attitude we have. What is the kind of concern we have for our neighbors. So when I become greedy, my greed will take me to the ends of the world to acquire everything. So in that case, I will be totally disregard towards the fellow human beings and the environment. Therefore, the first principle that Gandhi talked about is the Sarvodaya, or the principle of equality. Second thing is the threat to sustainability is when there is exploitation, there is a threat to sustainability. And exploitation is in different forms. Can you accept it? In fact, Gandhi talked about poverty as a form of violence. So unless we remove violence from the world, unless we remove violence from the society, you cannot have a sustainable world. And when we talk about violence, it is within me. I am a personification of violence. Then how can I create a non-violent world? How can I create a sustainable world? So there is violence in the food I am eating. There is violence, like you have a lot of junk foods, chemical foods, and the entire agriculture is based on using a lot of chemical insecticides, pesticides, fertilizers and all that. What kind of attitude do you get when you are eating food which is nothing but poison? So food in the violence in the food we are eating, violence in the clothes we are wearing, then violence in the articles we are using. We are giving children toys, machine guns. You see any child in any house, they play with all toys of violence, toys of destruction, like the military tanks. So what the children acquire from the beginning, from the childhood, is the mentality of violence, the mentality of cruelty. So is that the kind of thing we should teach them? And even the comic books they read, it talks a lot about violence. You look at the films, there's a lot of violence, extreme violence we are seeing. Therefore, this kind of violence in food, violence in clothes, violence in articles, then we have got violence in thoughts, violence in words and violence in deeds. Then we are personification of violence all through. How can we create a non-violent world or a sustainable world? So basically we need a non-exploitative social order. We call it the Sarvodaya social order. That's where we have seen a lot of colonialism. When I have desire, I am not satisfied with what I am having. There are just two models in the world. One is, are you satisfied with what you have? Or do you desire something what is not yours? So basically, we have created a mindset. This is again the problem with our education. We never created an education as to how man should live on this planet, peacefully with others. So we have just generated greed. We go to any college, any university. I talk to so many colleges and university students and ask them, what do you want to become as you grow up? I want to become a doctor, I want to become an engineer, I want to become this and that. But nobody says, I want to become a good human being. So the entire education focus is to become very rich overnight, because we have inculcated in them the idea of instant culture, instant coffee, instant idli mix, instant gulab jam mix. Everything should happen instantly. I don't have any patience. Therefore, I have to become rich. I have to become instantly rich at any cost. So what is the consequence of that? I am not bothered. So I indulge in corruption. I indulge in adulteration. I indulge in a process where there is environmental pollution, and I will go for colonization. For example, British people or the people of Europe feel that yes, whatever resources we have, we should be happy with it. What Professor Murthy was talking about, the local self-sufficiency, they were not contented with that. They said we want to have more wealth, we want to have trade with India or other Asian countries or African countries. And starting with the trade, they established various lot of kingdoms. So they started looting. So this kind of a loot in the form of colonialism, in the form of imperialism, and today we are seeing neo-colonialism where they are influencing our purchasing decisions. Like in our villages, people are using the soft drinks, then tobacco, confectionery, cosmetics like Fair and Lovely kind of things. And they decide how our purchase pattern should be. Then this kind of thing, this kind of purchasing patterns or behaviors, how can they lead to sustainability? So then again, we see a lot of war and war-related expenditure in the world. And today, many of the countries have the nuclear arsenal which can destroy the life on the planet 150 times. Then how, see, sustainability means continuity. And when you say with a war, you are putting an end to life, how can there be sustainability? Therefore, we all should raise a voice strongly against war. Can we have a defense budget? There are some organizations which are talking about non-violent defense budget. It is not the military budget, but it should be non-violent defense budget. That essentially any sustainability will depend on the decentralized mechanisms. Anything centralization is by default violence. Take for example, you talk about water, and I think we should use water as it precipitation comes, that is rainfall, and whatever water has come into my village or my area, I should conserve it. Like the watershed development, I should not allow the water to leave my borders, like what Anna Hazare has done. And I have done work in about 22 villages to do watershed and conserve water. Now, if you allow the water to just like that flow into rivers and you construct a dam, a huge multi-purpose dam, which are called temples of modern India. For me, they are not temples of modern India. Any dam by default is exploitation. What it happens, 10 districts water is taken to 2 districts, that's a dam. Therefore, if you want sustainability, use the water where it is available. Why should you use the water that has fallen on my ground to your ground? So decentralization should be our primary pillar of our philosophy. Otherwise, all centralization is violence. Look at, for example, villages in the evenings, they go to the temple, play bhajans, they dance, all the cultural festivals and all that. So happily they enjoy. But today, we don't do that. We sit at home, watch the TV. When Amitabh Bachchan has to entertain the whole nation. Is it not how much of centralization it is? Can this be sustainable? So am I having no role for entertaining my own people in the village? Therefore, this is very, very important. Then we should also develop peace. Unless there is peace, there cannot be sustainability. Human race cannot sustain unless there is peace and that it prevails. And for peace, it should be starting with myself. Am I peaceful within myself? And I should transmit peace from me to the family around, then community around, the district around, the state around, or the country and the world on the whole. Like the concentric circle that Gandhi talked about, we need to develop the kind of the entire peace starting with an individual. So another thing is, unless we also respect life. In fact, Gandhi said all life is one. Indivisibility of life. The life in you, the life in me, they are one and the same. The life in me and the life in the dog are one and the same. That is the unity of all living things. So that reverence, that concern, that respect, that will be the fundamental thing to create a sustainable world. And that's where we need not go for exploitation, things like that. So Gandhi brought in simple living and high thinking, and Gandhi said, live simply so that others may simply live. So this kind of basic principles that Gandhi has talked about, that is, he wanted to build the society on the foundations of truth and non-violence. And in fact, again, Professor Murthy talked about Hindu Swaraj, and Gandhi very many times came back to Hindu Swaraj. And one time was in 1945, when the signals were coming that the country is going to become independent. And Gandhi wrote a letter to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was to become the first Prime Minister of India, that the country is going to become independent, and a society which had been under foreign rule, foreign yoke for almost 200 years needs to be rejuvenated. We have to rebuild it. Because the British exploitation, it is not just economic. In fact, it is more to the subjugators even psychologically, mentally. That's how they introduced a new system of education. That education is not for the welfare of our own requirements, but that education which McCall introduced is basically to prepare slaves in this country. That is, whatever British rule, whatever principles, whatever precepts are there, to make Indians follow, that kind of education was introduced. So Gandhi talked about we should now rebuild our society on the foundations of truth and non-violence, which can be found in the simplest of villages. That's what he was talking about in the Swaraj. Because he said, my model of a free India is totally based on Hindu Swaraj. The model is exactly the same what I have written. He wrote it in 1909. Gandhi wrote Hindu Swaraj in 1909. And he said, my picture even in 1945 remains exactly the same. Therefore, for us, as we meet today under the aegis of Planetary University, we should take a resolve that we should work for a sustainable country, sustainable nation, sustainable world. And all world is one. You cannot isolate yourself. If some coronavirus comes in China, today it is threatening the entire world. Nobody can escape it. So this is a reality which we have to see, and we cannot escape. We have to be together. We have to work very, very hard on the principles of simplicity, honesty, concern, respect for life. All these things are very, very fundamental so that we can create a real sustainable world. So I am extremely happy to inaugurate this international webinar. It's a great honor that Professor Murthy, Professor Dastagir, then all the other faculty members, Professor B.B. Mohanty, you all given me. I am so grateful to you, and you have given us a wonderful opportunity to Gandhi King Foundation. And the Gandhi King Foundation is started about 10 years ago. And on 2nd October, we are organizing Gandhi Jayanti, or a conclusion of 2 years of celebration of Gandhi 150. And on that occasion, we are having a collaborative meeting with the Nobel Peace Summit. The president of the Nobel Peace Summit, Ekaterina, will be joining that meeting, and we are expecting 1 or 2 Nobel Peace Laureates also to join this meeting. I invite Pondicherry University also to come and collaborate. Let us work together. It is not personal to anybody. It is whatever we are doing, it is for the entire humanity. Therefore, I request the University of Pondicherry and all the people who are here in this particular meeting to please join us on 2nd October, Mahatma Gandhi's birthday, which is a mark of conclusion of the 2-year celebrations of Gandhi 150. And with these words, I declare the webinar inaugurated. Thank you very much. I am so grateful, and namaskar.
Thank you, Professor Prashad Kolanapalli from Gandhi King Foundation, Hyderabad, for the inaugural address. I would now like to invite Professor G. Chandrika, Professor and Head, Center for European Studies, Pondicherry University, for the felicitation address.
Revered Vice Chancellor Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji, our respected Director of Studies in Educational Innovation and Rural Reconstruction, Professor S. Balakrishnan, Director of the Gandhi King Foundation, Professor Prasad Golanapalli, Professor Pan Vinodi Mustika, Director, Center for Nonviolence and Peace Studies, University of Rhode Island, Kingston, USA, our beloved Dean, School of Social Sciences and International Studies, Professor P. Murthy, Professor Mohanty, Head of the Department of Sociology, Professor Ghulam Dastagir, the convener of this webinar, distinguished resource persons and scholars from India and abroad, faculty members of the Pondicherry University and other educational institutions across India, research scholars, students. It gives me great pleasure to address all of you today on this platform. And if sustainable development, a contemporary concept, is defined for the first time in a UN report in 1987 as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So we have already understood that this is a contemporary concept. Now, what Gandhian ideas have to do with this sustainable development? And when Gandhi lived, we don't have a concept called sustainable development. But on the other hand, we see the economic ideas of Gandhi, his economic thought. Actually, in this, we find sustainable development enshrined. The life of the Mahatma was his message. He was influenced by three moderns in his own words. One is Srimati Rajchandra, another is John Ruskin, and one more is Leo Tolstoy. And Gandhi himself says that his concept of bread labor, which is the cornerstone of sustainable development, he got from John Ruskin. And we also know that influenced by John Ruskin, Mahatma Gandhiji opened an ashram near Durban in South Africa called Phoenix. And when he opened the Leo Tolstoy farm near Johannesburg, again in South Africa, all these ashrams were actually models for sustainable development. And in India also, we found ashrams in Ahmedabad, Sabarmati Ashram, in Sevagram, that is near Wardha. These ashrams are models that he developed for community life. That's how community life takes precedence over individual interests. And no wonder the Gandhians have been in the forefront of environmental concerns in India. We have Vinoba Bhave, we have Sundarlal Bakukuna, and presently we have Rajendra Singh, the president of the Tarun Bharat Fund. So all of them actually, they stand for sustainable development. And we also know that Petra Kelly, who organized the Green Party in Germany, was very much influenced by Gandhian ideas. So it is indeed a fitting tribute on this 105th birth anniversary to look into the vision of sustainable development that we find in Gandhi's ideas. And Gandhi was a critic of technological rationalism. He was not for unbridled adaptation of industrialism. And his Hind Swaraj, as has been rightly pointed out by the speakers before me, actually was a discourse on man versus machine, on need versus greed. He was against capitalism and materialism. And all these today make him the voice wherever you find oppression or injustice is happening. We find the vision and voice of Gandhi is echoed. And this event, this international webinar, is part of a series of webinars that have been arranged with the help of our Professor Murthy, who is a well-known Gandhian among us from his joining the university. And those of us, we have been here for a long time, know of his commitment to Gandhi and Gandhian studies. Thanks to him, today we are having this international webinar with the presence of experts from Germany, USA, South Africa. And I also take this opportunity to congratulate Professor Mohanty and Professor Ghulam, who have jointly organized a seminar on this theme. And we very well know that Professor Mohanty, an expert in sociology, very well known, He has worked on rural sociality, and Professor Ghulam has worked on irrigation, development, and water resources. And it is very fitting that the sociology department and the faculty colleagues of Professor Ghulam and Professor Mukherjee have joined in this venture to organize this very important webinar. And I wish this webinar a grand success, and I also expect the Pondicherry University fraternity, no doubt, will benefit, will get enlightened by the deliberations of that seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor G. Chandrika ma'am, for the felicitation address. I would now like to invite Professor S. Balakrishnan, Director, Directorate of Studies, Educational Innovations and Rural Reconstruction, Pondicherry University, for today's presidential address.
Director is not there.
Professor.
Director Balakrishnan. Professor Balakrishnan is there.
Professor Balakrishnan.
Is he available? Professor Balakrishnan. I think it's not available.
We wait for Professor Balakrishnan to join us back.
Hello.
Sir, Murthy sir, yes sir.
Hello. I think it's not. Yes. I think Professor Balakrishnan not joined.
Yes sir.
He has
Then
some
we'll have.
technical problem maybe.
Yes sir. Then I'll invite Dr. Juan Bueno de Mesquita, Director, Center for Nonviolence and Peace Studies, University of Rhode Island, Kingston, USA, for today's keynote address.
Thank you very much. Namaskar to everyone. To share my screen. Is that possible to share the screen?
Yes, yeah.
I do not see any feature to share the screen. Is there a way I can share the screen?
I think there's no facilities.
Yes, sir. Now try, sir. Now try, sir.
Thank you very much. Are you able to see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Slide. Can everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, we are able to see the slide, sir. We can proceed.
My gratitude to everyone in the webinar. I'm very honored and privileged to be invited to speak with you all today at this Gandhian Discourse and Sustainable Development Sesquicentennial Panorama. My topic I'll be talking about is the relationship between sustainable peace and a sustainable world. And as I believe you have already introduced me, my name is Paul Bueno de Mesquita. I'm a professor at the University of Rhode Island, the Center for Nonviolence and Peace Studies, and I also contribute to the International Relations Graduate Program with a focus on global peace. I want to thank and give my gratitude to the University of Pondicherry and the Vice Chancellor, the Dean of Social Sciences, the Department Head of Sociology, the faculty, all of my fellow speakers, the guests and participants who may be attending and involved in this, because students are, of course, our future, and they have a very important role to play. I also want to thank, of course, the Gandhi King Foundation, Hyderabad, and my good colleague and dear friend, Prasad Galanapalli, for taking the lead in the Gandhi King Foundation, his role in the establishment of the Gandhi King Global Initiative at the King Education and Research Institute at Stanford, and of course, my own Center for Nonviolence Studies and the contribution and significant role that our center has played that makes it possible for me to actually be here and join you today. I want to extend greetings and gratitude to all of the Kingian nonviolence trainers who have come through our university and our training program, located in Jammu Kashmir, Dharamsala, the Seven Sisters in the Northeast, Manipur, Nagaland, and the surrounding South Asian countries of Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan. These are extraordinary people who over the last 20 years, hundreds of them have come to study with us and to learn the practices, principles, and strategies of social transformation according to the work of Dr. Martin Jr., which I'll be mentioning today. This is our the building on our university campus, just to show you where I come from. This is the Multicultural Center building. Our center office is rather small. We have a very large mission, but a very small office. We keep Gandhiji out there in the hallway to remind us of the importance of our mission. Our center would not be possible without the leadership and the establishment of the center by Dr. Bernard Lafayette. Dr. Bernard Lafayette worked side by side with Dr. King for many of the great social change movements and the civil rights movement in the United States. And it was with Bernard and Dr. King in a final conversation on April 4th, 1968, that Dr. King shared a final vision with Bernard that the next campaign had to be to institutionalize and internationalize nonviolence training and education. That was Dr. King's final vision. His future campaign, which sadly was assassinated. Bernard Lafayette took that vision and has been doing that work around the world the last 50 years nearly. And that's the work that I was trained in and that I'll be speaking to you about today. The question that I pose is, what is the relationship between the sustainability of the earth, the biosphere, where we live, our planetary health, and sustainable world peace? And what does Gandhian nonviolence have to offer in this question? Let me begin by sharing a personal story. We all have dreams. When I was a child, I grew up on an island off the coast of Texas, the Gulf of Mexico. And there were many ships that would come from all over the world. And I dreamed to have a bicycle that I could ride down to the port and see all the ships as they were coming and going. And I worked very hard. I did yard work and cut grass and chores until I finally saved enough money and I bought a brand new shiny red bicycle. I rode that bicycle on a great adventure one day, and I saw huge ships coming from all over the world with strange looking people that I had never seen before. And I had a dream to get on one of those ships and to travel to a place such as India? Well, as a child, my dream didn't come true to get on a ship and sail away. But many years later, I did visit India, and I have been to your wonderful country a number of times now, and I'm very fond of it. I did come by a ship, but it was a flying ship, not a sailing ship. Gandhi had a dream, of course, for the end of British colonial rule. And that dream became a reality, the nation that you live in today. And just think of the power of that dream and the power of nonviolence that he inspired. At the time, the British Empire, was worldwide. The saying goes, the sun never set on the British Empire. And that vast, expansive empire came to the negotiating table and surrendered its colonial rule to the people of India. It was Gandhi's reality. One of my great inspirations, of course, in America is Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King had a dream as well, that everyone would enjoy the equality as written into our American Constitution. But the reality for him was very difficult. He had to face violence in all of its different forms: racism, hatred, beatings, lynchings, murders, bombings of his house, burnings of churches and schools and buses. But eventually, using the nonviolence that he studied and learned, and with the influence of Gandhi himself, Dr. Martin Luther King's dream did become a reality. There were Supreme Court rulings to end segregation. There were civil and human rights laws that were passed in our Congress. There was a Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. At the time, he was the youngest person ever to receive that prize. He led the movement that resulted in the Voting Rights Act to ensure that everyone had the right to vote. In 1967, he was the first person to speak out publicly to demand the end of the Vietnam War. The dream of Martin Luther King began then, but it certainly continues. The United States and the idea, the experiment we call America, is still seeking true equality, true freedom, true justice for all, and the creation of what Dr. King often referred to as the beloved community. But we're beset upon by many, many other forms of violence, as many of the previous speakers I enjoyed listening to have really reminded us of the important Gandhian concepts and the realities of the world that we're living in today. I'm not going to go through all of the scientific evidence and detail all of the environmental violence that challenges our very existence on the planet. But let's see what Gandhi had to say about this. Gandhiji said, "What to the forests of the world is but a mirror reflection of what we are doing to ourselves and to one another. What's the reality of our planet? How does our dream for our planet Earth and the way we live on it match up to the reality? Sadly, we find the Earth is in crisis. Just last year, 11,000 scientists joined together to describe global warming as a climate emergency or a climate crisis. They stated there was immense increase in the scale that was needed to conserve the biosphere, the very environment in which we depend on for life itself. They noted it was that there were profound, troubling signs. They went on for details, but basically they said we are in a state of planetary emergency. Now, I want to move ahead in my remarks by stepping back. My good friend and colleague Prasad mentioned a little bit of the cosmic planetary view. And I want us to think, all of you, to think about where we are on the planet Earth in terms of our human evolution, the evolutionary perspective and context, the times we are living in. We know that the cycle of life, not only on the Earth, but in our solar system and in the broader universe in which we exist, has certain cycles of order and disorder, chaos and reordering. We know that we are part of a greater cosmic evolution, that the universe and the systems that we live in, as far as we know, existed from about 4.5 billion years ago. The Earth, 2.3 billion years old. And today we have a beautiful environment if we can only care for it and enjoy it. Humans seem to be the problem here. Mentioning that the problems that we have are not so much with the animals in the world, our fellow living creatures, but with our own humankind. Humans, as we know them, have existed in one way or another for about 200,000 years. We're not the first species on the planet, and who knows how long we might last the way things are going. Ramachandran said, any ape can reach for a banana, but only humans can reach for a star. Humans have the imagination and the creative thinking that is both our salvation and potentially our downfall. I want to pose that Gandhi and King were in fact prophetic evolutionary thinkers. When we think of evolution, of course, there are many anthropologists and evolutionary biologists today, but we go back to the work of Charles Darwin, of course, and his theory of evolution. This idea has often been misinterpreted as a theory of the strongest or the fittest, but it does lead us to believe that our evolution is dependent on competition. This, of course, is a misinterpretation. Really, our survival has always depended on who has been the most adaptive, and actually who has been the friendliest, not the most competitive, not the most violent, but the most cooperative. Those people who can adapt are the people who survive. That is why we are here today and actually speaking around the world, connected as we are on the internet, have been the most adaptive. The United Nations, UNESCO, has had many meetings to discuss violence and peace. And years ago, there was a meeting of scientists in Seville, Spain. The Seville Declaration was issued that organized and presented all the scientific evidence from all fields and disciplines, saying that in conclusion, humans are not biologically programmed to be violent, in our nature to be violent. Yes, we have the capacity for violence, just like we have the capacity for peace, but we are not programmed biologically to be violent. And this is a hopeful scientific conclusion for us. The great prophet and evolutionary thinker set out in his life story his experience as an experiment with truth, saying, my life consists of nothing but experiments. How Gandhi experimented on himself, pursuing a search for truth. And for him, this was a divine search, a search for God. Who were Gandhi's greatest influences? some of the previous speakers mentioned this, but Gandhi himself identified the three most important influences in his life as Leo Tolstoy, in the correspondences and letters they shared, and of course, Tolstoy's great writing, The Kingdom of God is Within You. Also, John Ruskin in Unto This Last, and the poet Rashchandra. Take a look at how these ideas and influences came to Gandhi briefly. Many people do not know, but actually some of the ideas of nonviolence that Gandhi received communications with Leo Tolstoy actually began in 19th century America, in my own state in which I live in, the very small state of Rhode Island. It was a man who lived in the 1800s by the name of Adin Ballou. He was a Unitarian Universalist, and he had dreams to create a peaceful community, a community of harmony and cooperation that would enact and live out Universalist creed. This community was settled in the nearby state of Massachusetts, and it was called Hopedale. Later stages of Adin Ballou's life, he begins to share his ideas and letters with none other than Count Leo Tolstoy. You can only imagine, there was no email then, what it took to send a letter from Massachusetts in the 1800s to Tolstoy in Russia at the time. Almost a miraculous process. But what we know is that Tolstoy says that in his work that he had read Ballou's writings on nonviolence and that he was in agreement with this point of view. Ballou himself in the correspondence did not really return the compliment, and he was critical of Tolstoy's religious and pacifistic views in his autobiography. Ballou criticized Tolstoy because he maintained that the individual must be passive in the face of all violence, including that of the insane, whereas Ballou felt this was carrying the idea of non-resistance too far. This is a very important part of nonviolence. Tolstoy, many others, thinkers and activists in nonviolence, realized that nonviolence is not passivism. It's not just simply being passive, but it is an active form, an active creation of one's life and movements. But these early ideas began in early America, and they were shared and sent to Tolstoy. And it was Tolstoy who later shared them in letters and correspondence with Gandhi himself. This is how Gandhi was influenced by Tolstoy, who in a sense was greatly influenced by Adin Ballou. Gandhi, of course, is recognized by Dr. King and other historians as a great influence on Dr. King. And Dr. King and Gandhi and Tolstoy and the ideas of early Americans like Adin Ballou actually have contributed to global nonviolence movements for hundreds of years now. Ruskin was the other great influence that Gandhi, and this famous piece of work, writing Unto This Last by John Ruskin, inspired Gandhi. And from this reading and his study, it was Sarvodaya that Gandhi wrote himself based on the ideas that he studied and derived from Ruskin. Gandhi said, "There's enough on earth for everybody's need, but not enough for everybody's greed." These are directly the kinds of thoughts and ideas that he got from Ruskin. Ruskin, of course, was critical of industrialization and mechanization. and the kind of modernization that was creating such destructiveness, not only in the environment, but also social destruction between people and different classes that existed then. This led Gandhi to thinking about himself, or thinking about his relationship with the environment we live in. And the Hind Swaraj, which has been mentioned by previous speakers this morning or this evening, wherever you are in the world, having to do with Indian home rule, is an extraordinary piece of thought and writing. Here, Gandhi prophetically cautions the world, much before any modern day environmentalist, about the problems of large-scale industrialization, the kinds of things that we're confronted with today. Gandhi visualized mechanization will not only lead to industrialization, to massive urbanization, problems of unemployment, but it will lead to the destruction of the environment. Written in 1909, Hind Swaraj warned of the dangers today, 100 years later. According to him, this will result in the development of an economic system that can minimize environmental degradation. The idea of Swaraj, self-rule, practical, sustainable development. Gandhi was not only highly theoretical, philosophical in his principles, but he was a pragmatist. He was very practical about how we go about implementing and living out those ideas. Many of the sustainable development goals that we see now, that the world hopefully is making progress toward, you could almost trace to Gandhi's thinking years earlier. Now, let me shift to the bridge, to Gandhi's bridge to the later part of the 20th century and into the 21st century. It was King who brought Gandhi's ideas into more modern society in terms of how we approach our life in civil society in what King called the beloved community. Influenced by Gandhi, King had 6 principles, and these principles became the heart of what we call Kingian philosophy. Dr. King was a great spokesperson. He was a spiritual minister, of course, but he studied systematic theology, and he was recognized by the American Philosophy Society as one of America's great philosophers and thinkers. Of course, he studied Tolstoy and Thoreau and Gandhi and many, many others. And he writes about his own intellectual pilgrimage to nonviolence in one of his first books called Stride Toward Freedom, which documented the experience in the Montgomery bus boycott, Dr. King's first real experience in a leadership role using nonviolence boycott, economic boycott methods. A pilgrimage, as you all know, is a journey. It's a personal, moral, and spiritual significant journey. And Dr. King writes about his own pilgrimage to nonviolence. And in it, he says, Gandhi lifted the love ethic of Jesus to a powerful and effective social force on a large scale. This was something that King wrote that he was searching for. He could not find a way to take his Christian values and his belief in Jesus and what it could do to right the wrongs of society on a broad scale. When he read and studied Gandhi, he had discovered the method for social reform that he had been seeking. He found intellectual and moral satisfaction that he did not find in other philosophers. The utilitarianism of Bentham and Mill, the revolutionary thinking of Marx or Lenin, social contract theories of Hobbes, the back to nature optimism of Rousseau, Superman ideas of Nietzsche. All of these things couldn't measure up to what he found in the nonviolent resistance philosophy of Gandhi. King wrote that he came to feel that this was the only moral and practically sound method that was open to oppressed people freedom. Gandhi said, nonviolence is not a garment to be put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart, and it must be an inseparable part of our living. And King took this to heart, and he created his own principle. Now, these principles I've just briefly summarized. They're not the extensive principle that Dr. King writes so eloquently about in his own books and writings. But basically, his first principle is one of courage. And he says that nonviolence is a way of life that takes for courageous people. It is not a way of life for cowards. It is not sitting idly by in fear. And if we're talking about sustainable development and saving the planet and saving our societies and our very existence on Earth, confronting the challenges that we have in front of us, we must stand up, we must summon our courage. Principle 2, the beloved community is the framework for the future. This keeps in mind that we have to reach across our differences. We have to value our diversity, and through friendship and understanding, we must create this future world society based on friendship and understanding. That this, in a sense, is a goal. Gandhi himself said, I want to realize brotherhood or identity, not merely with the beings called human, but identity with all life, even things that crawl upon the earth, all things natural. Gandhi is thinking he wants to be a brother with all of life. And from that, we see King's principle of beloved community as the goal of the future. Principle 3 was to attack the forces of evil, not persons doing evil. So much today we see in our societies and political conflict in regions around the world, one group versus another, the otherization of people who are different from us or who think differently from us. Those people to be bad people, or they're villains because they don't agree with us, or they don't think like us, or they don't look or sound like us. This characterizes people who are others from us as evil. King and Gandhi extended the hand of friendship and brotherhood, and they focused themselves on the problems, not on the persons engaged in wrongful actions. This is a really central part of nonviolence. It accepts all into the beloved community. King's principle 4 was to accept suffering. Gandhi himself, of course, talked about self-purification, living an austere life of simplicity, being able to accept suffering. And this is incorporated into Dr. King's philosophy as well. Accept suffering without retaliation. But there has to be a higher purpose. It wasn't just a life of suffering. It wasn't a life of victimization. It was a life of sacrifice for a higher purpose, a higher cause. Principle 5 is that principle of self-purification, where and purify our spirit. No internal violence. He believed, and psychologists and sociologists, you there at University of Pondicherry and the sociology and social sciences would of course understand that all outward forms of violence, the various kinds of violence, most of which begins within our own minds, within our own spirit. Small ideas, small feelings begin to accelerate and escalate into outward forms of behavior and actions of violence. King and Gandhi were advising us to purify ourselves of this internal violence of the spirit. It was hard for them to say, oh, you're nonviolent because you didn't strike anyone today. But there are many ways that we have internalized violence that we have to also purify ourselves from. Gandhi said it's not nonviolence if we merely love those that love us. It is nonviolence only when we love those that hate us. I know how difficult it is to follow this grand law of love, but are we not all great and good things difficult to do? This is the principle of love. King and Gandhi believed that love was a foundational part, the bedrock of nonviolence. King describes three types of love: the eros, romantic love; the philia, brotherly love, I'll be good to you if you be good to me, that reciprocation. But the highest form of love that he associated with the foundation of nonviolence was the Greek word agape. And agape meant a disinterested, an unreciprocated love, an unconditional love. And this was not a weak or passive love. This was a very strong, overpowering, active love. It was the willingness to go to any length to save and restore a community. This was at the heart of King's fifth principle, to rid ourselves of internal violence and to embed within our spirit the agape love. The final of King was the universe is on the side of justice. And this is a principle of hopefulness and fairness. We see in the natural world, when there is a drought, we have rain to replenish and restore water to the world. When there is flooding, we see, of course, the sun comes and returns us to dry ground. When it's cold in the winter, the season changes and we see warmth. And this cycle of life, King believed, was a universe in balance. And when we think of justice, we think of fairness and balance. And this is very important, a belief in the justice, that justice will prevail. King said the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice, meaning we may not have justice immediately, but we have to keep hope and we have to be working towards this goal, this end of justice for all. Now, these were lofty principles, but what makes King unique is that he takes these strategies. I just mentioned or list them here, but with each of these items, there is a whole strategic body of work, tactics and strategies and methods that are being used really in many, many social movements, protests, movements of dissent, and social justice movements here in our country and really around the world in many places. But briefly, these have to do with, first, gathering information. Many times we need to get the facts. We're talking about sustainable development and how do we sustain our environment. You know, there's a lot of confusion. We have to first study and gather the facts. And with those facts, we have to educate not only ourselves, but others. And through that education, we develop leaders who can become articulate spokespeople, who can bring that education and that information to larger and larger groups of people. The third step is personal commitment. This is a commitment of, to the principle of sacrifice and motivating ourselves to go the distance, to persist, to take action, courageous. This is a step that helps us develop the enthusiasm, the energy, the morale that we need to take on big challenges. The fourth step is negotiation, to engage in dialogue. Rather than stop talking with people, we need to talk more, particularly with people with whom we don't get along or with whom we harbor ill will toward, or who harbor ill will toward us. Through negotiation, we're able to see what our perspectives are and how they might agree or disagree. Negotiation and dialogue doesn't always work miraculously. And when it fails, we move to the fifth step, which is taking action. Many times we have to just take action, even if we are just in the minority, if it's just one of us. Sometimes the power of one can be very strong. When Gandhiji himself set off on the Salt March, the sixth step with Kingian thinking and nonviolence is reconciliation. This is, of course, the end goal. All action, all negotiation, all implementation of principles and strategies must lead toward reconciliation. A fair outcome for all, where everyone's needs are met satisfactorily. It's not a winning over one, where there's a winner and a loser. Have to be lifted up. Remember, in Gandhi's the uplift of all, lift of us over them. It's the uplift of everyone. Dr. King said, darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. If we want to tackle the greatest challenges facing humankind today, our future, our development, can we sustain our planet, the biosphere in which we live and depend on for our very existence? How can we approach sustaining our own societies, our own striving for brotherhood, sisterhood, democracy, living in a peaceful, harmonious world? We cannot do that by force. We cannot do that by violence. We cannot do that through warfare or the threat of warfare. Einstein, the genius that he was, once said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. We cannot take the industrialization, the destruction of our environment, and use that as a solution to try to save the planet. We come to this way of thinking about truth. And King liked this idea of finding the truth that Gandhi so often spoke about. And he referred to a dialectical method, dialectical reasoning method that promoted, rather than dualistic thinking, us against them, or right against wrong, or my way or your way, but a non-dualistic thinking. This was a method he learned from the philosopher Georg Hegel, the German philosopher, where we can say on one side, there's the thesis, and conquering nature, we're the master of the world, versus nature conquers man. Through thorough analysis, looking at this through an analytical lens, we can arrive at a synthesis of man and nature coming together in a sustainable world. This is what Gandhi and King would say is the truth, and what Hegel said in this method of dialectical reasoning. You take the whole rather than one side or the other. You try to blend and create a synthesis of what might be seen as polar opposite ideas. I'll end my remarks here with a final quote by Dr. King. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, he said. We are tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all of us indirectly. Listen to that. caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. We cannot escape it. We could be selfish, we can be individualistic, we can be elitist, but we cannot escape that we are living in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one affects all. He went on to say, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This king concluded is the interrelated structure of reality. We must face the reality of our planet, which is crying out for sustainability, the reality of the social conflicts that we see around the world. We're interrelated to each other. We're interrelated with our natural environment. Our economic problems, the greed of unfettered capitalism. And too often we've associated democratic societies with capitalistic societies. King said, you know, capitalism was a good idea to a point, but then people are more concerned with making a living instead of making a life. I wish we had more time to discuss it. I wish there was more opportunities, but I hope these ideas have been useful to you and perhaps informed you of Dr. King's view and how some of Gandhi's basic ideas and thinking, so prophetic, so evolutionary, both Gandhi and King, their ideas become a powerful partnership that lead me to conclude by saying that a nonviolent, peaceful world is a sustainable world. Only when we first become a nonviolent, peaceful world will we actually be able to have sustainable development activities in that world. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you today. I wish you all very well in the remainder of this very exciting webinar. I hope to join you as I can, as my schedule will allow, and as the time zones permit. I want to congratulate the webinar organizers. Again, I'm grateful to the University of Pondicherry for this opportunity and for hosting this international session. I hope that in the future, I'll be able to visit your university, and I would love to meet you all, and I would love to discuss these ideas further with you, your faculty, your students, and I'm very interested to know if your university would be interested in a Center for Nonviolence and Peace, similar to the one we have at our university. I thank you all very much for your kind attention, and I wish you well the remaining sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paul Bueno de Mesquita, Director, Center for Nonviolence and Peace Studies from the University of Rhode Island. I would now like to invite Dr. Iftikhar Alam, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, Pondicherry University, India, and the co-convener of the webinar for the vote of thanks.
I convey my heartiest gratitude to all of you for making this event wonderful. This international webinar is adorned with Gandhian thinkers and his admirers spread across the world who are inspiring many others. I deemed it my privilege to propose vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed in organizing this event. First and foremost, I would take the opportunity to convey my sincere gratitude to the chief guest, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University, Professor Gurmeet Singh, a renowned academician and transformation leader. Under his stewardship, Pondicherry University is achieving its glory in academic and research. Thank you very much, sir. I'm immensely pleased to convey my thanks to the esteemed director, Professor S. Balakrishnan, Director of Studies, Educational Innovation and Rural Reconstruction. Your unrelenting effort in nurturing academic ambience in the university and extended support in organizing various national and international events are highly commendable. Thank you, sir. I wholeheartedly thank Professor Paul Bruno de Mesquita, Director, Center for Nonviolence and Peace Studies, University of Rhode Island, USA, for accepting our invitation. So your inspirational talk is beautifully based upon principles and ideas of Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and other visionaries. Your lecture was inspiring for all of us. Thank you, sir. My special thanks to Professor Prasad Gulanpalli from Gandhi King Foundation, who has collaborated with the Department of Sociology, Pondicherry University, and have been highly instrumental in coordinating with renowned resource persons and organizing this wonderful event. So we look forward to associate with you in future as well. I extend my special thanks to Professor P. Murthy, Dean, School of Social Sciences and International Studies, and Nodal Officer, 150th birth anniversary celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi in Pondicherry University. Being the Nodal Officer, Sir initiated the concept of this program and have been personally involved in guiding the entire planning and preparation of this event, which is a part of the series of events he has been organizing at the backdrop of 150th birth anniversary celebration of Mahatma Gandhi, and many more to come as well. Through his endless support, we could organize this event successfully. Thank you, sir. I thank Professor B.B. Mohanty, Head, Department of Sociology, Pondicherry University, a renowned sociologist, yet simple and approachable person. Sir has been very kind in providing all administrative and personal support for this program. I thank you, sir. I also thank Professor G. Chandrika, Head, Center for European Studies, for accepting our invitation. Ma'am, your discourse on Gandhian thinking was praiseworthy and thought-provoking. We are privileged to have you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you to Professor K.G. Dastagir, Department of Sociology. I would say that he is the mitochondria of the entire program. Sir has been extremely diligent in organizing and coordinating the entire event. This program was all possible owing to his personal effort and untiring indulgence. Working with him in the team has been a great learning experience. Along with him, I also thank Dr. Suresh, guest faculty, and webinar co-convener, Department of Political Science, DDE, Director of Distance Education, Pondicherry University, for his cooperation in organizing this program. I also would like to acknowledge the technical support provided by the staff at Computer Center, Pondicherry University. I also extend my thanks to media and other organizations in covering the program. Thank you. Thank you for giving this opportunity to me. Thank you.
Sir, any feedback link here? Sir, please inform. Have necessary any feedback link or provide any feedback link?
Yes, we have a feedback link that we provided to you.
Thank you, Dr. Iftikaran. I would now like to request one and all to kindly raise for the national anthem. Sir, kindly play the national anthem.
गणमन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Professor Murthy sir, do we move on to the first technical session?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Sir, you're audible.
Yes. Okay. I
For
think.
the first technical session, I would invite Professor P.
Yes.
Murthy, Dean School of Social Sciences and International Studies and Nodal Officer 150th Birth Anniversary Celebrations of Mahatma Gandhi, Pondicherry University, for chairing today's first technical session.
Yeah. At the outset, I want to say we had an excellent inaugural function, but little lengthy. But however, we have done well, despite of the technical problems that we faced. I think we are a little late to start this technical session. I'm sorry for that. The organizers, of course, very well manner they planned, but somehow due to technicalities, we really fell short of maintaining the time. Of course, at the outset, I want to say that Gandhian vision on sustainable development is the title given to the session. Actually, we are supposed to highlight Gandhian vision of sustainable development, as in most of the talk that you listened to just now, that Paul, a great personality, that he covered so many concepts that are highly related and relevant for understanding about sustainable development. He concluded saying that unless until we erect non-violent world, we cannot attain sustainable goal, whether it is set by United Nations or set by some organizations. So the precondition is to have non-violent world order to be erected. So this is what every intellectual serious about peace and sustainable order, or every individual aiming at developing sustainable order in their own areas, whether it is social, political, economic. We need to understand about the importance of building non-violent world order. This movement started long back. United Nations declared one decade as a non-violent decade. We are taking efforts, but we are failing due to market forces, due to militarism, due to materialism dominating the world. Capitalism may be dominating in the form of economy. Materialism may be dominating in the form of comfort life, providing lots of facilities to the humankind, unexpected, facilities, unimaginable facilities that we are encountering in the human, life settings. They are all violent, according to Mahatma. That is what we are facing today. We have not many setbacks created by ourselves. We created setbacks, we created violent order, and we are facing problems. That is the kind of things that we have to understand. We are now struggling to come out of it. Very, very tough. We are living in a 21st century encircled by violence. Due to our settings we created, lot many problems are going against our life settings. And it is going to be the biggest challenge in this 21st century. We have passed 2 decades in 21st century also. We are now entering into the 3rd decade. I don't know what we are going to do with all these challenges. How to create opportunities for humankind. How to reap the better things for the younger generation of today. India is the largest country having younger people in this world. These are all very important areas to be pointed on. We have to think about all this. Try to understand about the existing problems and address all this. We have got a great personality from Germany. We expected a speaker from South Africa. He informed me that he had some technical problems one of his colleagues talked to me from South Africa, and who is going to join us in 3rd October, to address the gathering. And he had some technical issues, therefore he could not come, and he will join us by 3rd October when we have closing ceremony for this entire journey that we had for the last 2 years. We had great journey. Personally, me was a little bit tired. I have been encountering so many stress points. The human stress points are, very important to be managed as an individual. Stress-free individual is not possible today. That is how Gandhiji erects his principles, starting with the personal front. Swadeshi is a personal front. Self-realization, self-reform. All these things are realization-based, love-based. Swadeshi is love-based. Then he talks about Swaraj. When you are crossing that stage, you go for Swaraj. Self-rule is the best rule. What way you have to rule? The conditionalities that he creates. Self-discipline is the best rule. Very importantly, he says, self-discipline is the cornerstone for ruling yourself. Beautifully, coined this concept, self-discipline concept. The third important point that Gandhiji highlighted was, if you are confident in all this, you go for the 3rd stage, that is Gram Swaraj stage. As a citizen of the Gram, first, as an individual of the Gram, you go for that stage, the ruling of the Gram. Then you extend your stage for Panchayat Raj stage, collection of collective responsibility. If you are successful in it, go for Sarvodaya, the welfare of all stage. His imagination for all is, as Paul pointed out, welfare of all, the welfare of the world, the humanity's welfare. Gandhiji had a great dream, and he had constructed all these concepts systematically. Any child can understand. Any responsible citizen can understand. Citizen of the world can understand. Unfortunately, we lagged behind, and we could not do anything for constructing all this principles-based world, moral-based world. We are inseparable materialism-based world, as Paul pointed out, maybe capitalism-based world. Unfortunately, academicians could not address all this issues seriously. And Ram Rajya, the last stage, 6th stage, is called the Ram Rajya stage. Mahatma Gandhi had dream, the philosopher king dream, as done by Plato, Aristotle. Mahatma felt like go for Ram Rajya, a perfect rule, led by the Antyodaya movements, the last man's responsibility. The poorest of the poor, all they should be put in the equal platform, which is not at all there, challenged by this economic world of today, the violent economic world of today, the war economic world of today. Therefore, we have to understand about very important concepts that are going to be highlighted by the speaker from Germany. He is going to speak on sustainable vision of Mahatma Gandhi. We can also welcome him to this. I think he is available here. Christian Patloff. Please, you can take the podium, sir. Welcome to this.
Thank you.
Let us all,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Very nice of you. I just send you my details so you can contact me. So I'm very happy to listen to some minutes of Professor De Mesquita's great talk on Satyagraha, King Gandhi and Edinburgh. I'm very happy. And certainly we should also think about William Lloyd Garrison, his Declaration of Sentiments, and the great abolitionists who inspired Tolstoy and Gandhi. So I'm so happy to listen to him. So now I would like to take the opportunity. Just want to ask you first if you understand me properly. Is it okay? Can you understand me properly? Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. It's very
That's
good.
very
Go ahead. Go.
Referred to a lecture we can also listen to on YouTube. And I show you the link. I give you the link of this lecture so you can also listen to the text which I now refer to. And it is a text on Savodaya. The term Savodaya is a compound that Mahatma Gandhi created from two Sanskrit roots, Sarva, meaning all, and Udaya, meaning uplift. Udaya means welfare of all, advancement of all, universal dawn. That is the political message of equality and well-being for each and every one. Contribution is on Savodaya as emancipation, Ruskin, Tolstoy, Gandhi. Gandhi thus not only created a new term for the socio-economic basis of nonviolent resistance, but also assigned a new meaning to the term Orient, because he translated Savodaya also as the universal dawn. Orient, which originally means where the sun rises, orients. The prophetic message of the East, this message of the Orient, is linked with emancipation for those affected and victimized by slavery and war. Orient has analogues from many languages. For instance, the terms Levant, French Levant, rising, or in Russian Vostok, sunrise. The Levant is an approximate historical geographical term referring to a large area in the eastern Mediterranean region of Western Asia. The term entered English in the late 15th century from French. It derives from the Italian levante, meaning rising, implying the rising of the sun in the east, and is broadly equivalent to the term in Arabic al-Mashriq, meaning the eastern place where the sun rises. And the opposite term, as you know, is Occident, which derives from the Latin word Occidens, meaning where the sun sets. So back to Savodaya. For Gandhi, Savodaya means the basis for Swadeshi, meaning self-reliance. And this is what Gandhi wrote about Swadeshi. Swadeshi carries a great and profound meaning. It does not mean merely the use of what is produced in one's own country. That meaning is certainly there in Swadeshi, but there is another meaning implied in it which is far greater and much more important. Swadeshi means reliance on our own strength. We should also know what we mean by reliance on our own strength. Our strength means the strength of our body, our mind, and our soul. From among these, on which should we depend? The answer is brief. The soul is supreme. And therefore, soul force is the foundation on which man must build. Passive resistance, or satyagraha, is a mode of fighting which depends on such force. That, then, is the only real key to success for the Indians. So this is how Gandhi connected the soul force of Satyagraha with Swadeshi. The Swadeshi movement was a part of the Indian independence movement and the development of Indian nationalism. The movement started in 1905 against the partition of Bengal. It was one of the most successful movements against British rule, primarily organized and led by Aurobindo Ghosh, Lokmanya Tilak, and Lala Lajpat Rai. Swadeshi was a key focus of Mahatma Gandhi, who described it as the soul of Swaraj, self-rule. The movement from Bengal ended in 1911. The word Swadeshi is a conjunction of two Sanskrit words, swa and desh, meaning self and home. Swadeshi as an adjective means of one's own home. In the second half of the 19th century, the first Swadeshi movement was developed by Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Mahadev Ranade, and Lokmanya Tilak. By studying the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi, we found out that the founding of his first settlement project, Phoenix, at Inanda near Durban in South Africa with the International Printing Press for Indian Opinion was not only inspired by John Ruskin's Unto This Last, but also by the Olander Institute of John and Nokutela Dube in the tradition of Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute. It was as early as 1903 that Mahatma Gandhi wrote about Booker T. Washington, after he had learned about him from an article by Romain Rolland, written in the journal East and West. Booker, as he was known when yet a slave, was born about the year 1858. This is what Gandhi wrote. The exact date being unknown to him. His lot, says Mr. Rolland, was the average one. He did not fall under the tyranny of one of those brutes so forcibly depicted in Mrs. Beecher Stowe's novel, Uncle Tom's Hut. But even those masters who were kind to their slaves treated them like inferior beings, a kind of useful cattle which had to be well fed if they were to work well, and which had no need of comforts they would be unable to appreciate. When freedom for the slaves was proclaimed, Mr. Booker's family left the plantations and went to town. He had a very great desire, illiterate though he was, to learn and educate himself. He therefore set about learning the rudiments of the English language and attended a night school. Harvard University has honored him with the degree of Master of Arts. In traveling through Europe, he has drawn crowds of appreciative audiences. A life such as this teaches the lesson to all of us. If it is one full of honors, the honors have been well earned after patient toil and suffering. Mr. Washington might have chosen another career in which he might have shown perhaps better in the estimation of some, but he chose first of all to raise his people, to qualify them for the great task lying before them. With himself, he has raised his own countrymen also immeasurably and set to them, as indeed to all of us who care to study his life, an example worthy to be followed. One word to our own countrymen, and we have done. We have in our midst in India men who have devoted their lives to the service of their country, but we make bold to say that the life of our hero would perhaps rank higher than that of any British Indian, for the simple reason that we have a very great past and an ancient civilization. What therefore may be, and is undoubtedly natural in us, is a very great merit in Booker Washington. Be that, however, as it may, a contemplation of lives like this cannot fail to do good. So the Indian lawyer in South Africa, M.K. Gandhi, and John Langalibalele Dube and Nokutela Dube shared an appreciation of Washington's educational ideas. His educational ideals, that is vocational training, because John Dube had experienced these ideals in practice and firsthand at Oberlin College, Ohio. Founded by Lewis Adams, a former slave, and George W. Campbell, a former slaveholder, the Tuskegee Institute was established initially as the Tuskegee Normal School for Colored Teachers, but its syllabi also included practical farming skills and vocational training in various trades found in the region of Alabama and the rural South. The institute thereby closely followed Washington's founding ideal of self-reliance. The sugar plantation owner Marshall Campbell introduced Gandhi and Dubhe in the year 1905, 1 year after the founding of Phoenix Settlement. Gandhi reported this episode in his Indian Opinion, the voice of the South African Indians, published in 4 languages: English, Hindi, Gujarati, and Tamil, as follows. Gandhi. Some members of the British Association in England are at present visiting South Africa. They are all scientists and possess great knowledge. This is the first event of its kind in South Africa. A few days ago, when they were in Natal, the Honorable Mr. Marshall Campbell took them to his residence at Mount Edgecombe. Addressing them, Mr. Dubhe made a very impressive speech. This Mr. Dubhe is a Negro of whom one should know. He has acquired, through his own labors, over 300 acres of land near Phoenix. There, he imparts education to his brethren, teaching them various trades and crafts and preparing them for the battle of life. It was unfair to burden the Negroes with taxes. Also, it was like cutting down the very branch one was sitting on. They worked hard, and without them, the whites could not carry on for a moment. They made loyal subjects, and Natal was the land of their birth. For them, there was no country other than South Africa, and to deprive them of their rights over lands, etc., was like banishing them from their home. Mr. Dubhe's speech produced a very good impression on the whites, and he suggested to them that if they sympathized with the Negroes, they might help him to start a smithy on his farm. The members of the British Association subscribed £60 on the spot and presented the sum to him. The Honorable Mr. Marshall Campbell also made a speech on the occasion, praising the Kafirs in Natal and pointed out that they were good and useful, and the ill will shown to them was due to misunderstanding and was wrong. Gandhi at that time was an assimilated and loyal citizen of the British Empire and a barrister of law, educated in London. As a lawyer for Indian merchants, he sought strategies for the emancipation of all so-called colored immigrants in South Africa from all over Asia who were not born in South Africa, unlike the Bantu peoples such as Xhosa and Zulu. Olander High School is a secondary school in Inanda, KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. It was the first school in South Africa started by a black person, John Dubhe. The school was called Olander by Dubhe based on the word Ulanga, which means the point of new growth in a plant or an ancestor for a descended family. In its early years, the school taught not only basic education, but also vocational skills such as journalism, shoe and dressmaking, carpentry, motor mechanics, and agriculture. Dubhe contributed to the administration as well as teaching journalism. Dubhe was particularly influenced by reading Washington's book Up from Slavery, a book on self-reliance. John Dubhe was inspired by Gandhi's nonviolent resistance campaigns since 1906 and founded the South African Native National Congress at Bloemfontein on 8th of January 1912, the forerunner to the African National Congress, ANC. The future Nobel Peace Laureate of 1960, Albert John Luthuli, was a student at Olander in 1914. Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute and John and Nokutela Dube's Olander Institute were the model for Gandhi's Phoenix settlement in terms of journalism, gardening, and vocational training. There are two quotes which prove the Tolstoyan and Ruskinian traditions of Indian opinion and Phoenix settlement. Mr. Gandhi is the real proprietor of Indian opinion from which no profits are made and to which he has devoted the whole of his savings. There are two Englishmen associated with him in that work, and they and several Indians have, for the sake of the paper, reduced themselves to voluntary pauperism. The paper is being run on Tolstoy's and Ruskin's lines. Its publicly declared mission is to bring the two communities together and become an educative medium for the Indian community. In the Phoenix Trust Deed of 1912, printed in Indian opinion, it is explicitly mentioned that the majority of the settlers joined the settlement to follow and promote the ideals set forth by Tolstoy and Ruskin in their lives and works. In the year 1908, as a basic information of his compatriots, Gandhi published a 9-part Gujarati paraphrase of John Ruskin's book Unto This Last, 4 essays on the principles of political economy. He gave his paraphrase the new name of his new concept, Savodaya. These 9 parts were later translated into English. I now quote Gandhi in his own words from his preface and his conclusion. Gandhi writes, "People in the West generally hold that it is man's duty to promote the happiness, prosperity that is, of the greatest number. Happiness is taken to mean material happiness exclusively, that is, economic prosperity. If in the pursuit of this happiness, moral laws are violated, it does not matter much. Again, as the object is the happiness of the greatest number, people in the West do not believe it to be wrong if it is secured at the cost of the minority. The consequences of this attitude are in evidence in all Western countries. The exclusive quest for the physical and material happiness of the majority has no sanction in divine law. In fact, some thoughtful persons in the West have pointed out that it is contrary to divine law to pursue happiness in violation of moral principles. The late John Ruskin was foremost among these. He was an Englishman of great learning. He has written numerous books on art and crafts. He has also written a great deal on ethical questions. One of these books, a small one, Ruskin himself believed to be his best. It is read widely wherever English is spoken. In the book, he has effectively countered these arguments and shown that the well-being of the people at large consists in conforming to the moral law. We in India are much given nowadays to imitation of the West. We do grant that it is necessary to imitate the West in certain respects. At the same time, there is no doubt that many Western ideas are wrong. It will be admitted on all hands that what is bad must be eschewed. The condition of Indians in South Africa is pitiable. We go out to distant lands to make money. We are so taken up with this that we become oblivious of morality and of God. We become engrossed in the pursuit of self-interest. In the sequel, we find that going abroad does us more harm than good, or does not profit us as much as it ought to. All religions presuppose the moral law. But even if we disregard religion as such, its observance is necessary on grounds of common sense also. Our happiness consists in observing it. This is what John Ruskin has established. He has opened the eyes of the Western people to this, and today we see a large number of Europeans modeling their conduct on his teaching. In order that Indians may profit by his ideas, we have decided to present extracts from his book in a manner intelligible to Indians who do not know English. Socrates gave us some idea of man's duty. He practiced his precepts. It can be argued that Ruskin's ideas are an elaboration of Socrates's. Ruskin has described vividly how one who wants to live by Socrates's ideas should acquit himself in the different vocations. The summary of his work, which we offer here, is not really a translation. If we translated it, the common reader might be unable to follow some of the biblical allusions, etc. We present therefore only the substance of Ruskin's work. We do not even explain what the title of the book means, for it can be understood only by a person who has read the Bible in English. But since the object which the book works towards is the welfare of all, that is, the advancement of all, and not merely of the greatest number, we have entitled these articles Savodaya. What Ruskin wrote for his countrymen, the British, is 1,000 times more applicable to Indians. New ideas are spreading in India. The advent of a new spirit among the young who have received Western education is, of course, to be welcomed. But the outcome will be beneficial only if that spirit is canalized properly. If it is not, it is bound to be harmful. From one side, we hear the cry for Swarajya. From another, for the quick accumulation of wealth by setting up factories like those in Britain. Our people hardly understand what Swarajya means. America, France, and England are all great states, but there's no reason to think that they are really happy. Real Swarajya consists in restraint. He alone is capable of this who leads a moral life, does not cheat anyone, does not forsake truth, and does his duty to his parents, his wife, his children, his servant, and his neighbor. Such a man will enjoy Swarajya wherever he may happen to live. We ought to be careful, therefore, not to be hasty and thoughtlessly to imitate the people of the West. Just as we cannot achieve real Swarajya by following the path of evil that is killing the British, so also will it not be possible for us to achieve it by establishing big factories in India. Accumulation of gold and silver will not bring Swarajya. This has been convincingly proved by Ruskin. But Swarajya is to be achieved by righteous means. It must be real Swarajya. It cannot be achieved by violent methods or by setting up factories. We must have industry, but of the right kind. India was once looked upon as a golden land because Indians then were people of sterling worth. The land is still the same, but the people have changed, and that is why it has become arid. To transform it into a golden land again, we must transmute ourselves into gold by leading a life of virtue. The philosopher's stone, which can bring this about, consists of 2 syllables, satya. If therefore every Indian makes it a point to follow truth always, India will achieve Swarajya as a matter of course. This is the substance of Ruskin's book. We can find the doctrine of Satyagraha in the writings of Ruskin and Thoreau. Whilst the views expressed in Hind Swaraj are held by me, I have but endeavored humbly to follow Tolstoy, Ruskin, Thoreau, Emerson, and other writers, besides the masters of Indian philosophy. Tolstoy has been one of my teachers for a number of years. In the 1920s, when Gandhi created the movement of the spinning wheel, charkha, for homespun cotton yarn, khadi, before the concept Savodaya had been woven into an all-embracing constructive program with the support of the Kumarappas and Vinoba Bhave, Gandhi recollected Bondarev and Tolstoy's concept of bread labor in detail and compared bread labor with the ancient Indian notion of sacrifice, yajna. Gandhi wrote, Jesus was a carpenter. He never used his intellect to earn his livelihood. We do not know how much manual work Buddha did before he attained wisdom. Yes, we know this much, that he did not propagate religion for securing his livelihood. He lived on charity that could not militate against the duty of labor. A roving ascetic has to do a lot of manual work. Now to come to Tolstoy. What his wife has said is true, but it is not the whole truth. After the change in his outlook, Tolstoy never took for himself the income from his books. Although he had property worth millions, he lived like a guest in his own house. After the attainment of wisdom, he worked 8 hours a day and earned his wages. Sometimes he worked in the field and sometimes he made shoes at home. Although he did not earn much by doing such work, still he earned enough to feed himself. Tolstoy strove hard to practice what he preached. This was characteristic of him. The sum and substance of all this discussion is that the duty which the ancients observed themselves and which the majority in the world discharges even today has been presented to the world in an explicit manner by him. In fact, this doctrine was not Tolstoy's original idea. It was thought of by a great Russian writer by name Bondarev. Tolstoy endorsed it and proclaimed it to the world. So bread labor. Gandhi writes, the ashram holds that every man and woman must work in order to live. This principle came home to me upon reading one of Tolstoy's essays. Referring to the Russian writer Bondarev, Tolstoy observes that his discovery of the vital importance of bread labor is one of the most remarkable discoveries of modern times. The idea is that every healthy individual must labor enough for his food, and his intellectual faculties must be exercised not in order to obtain a living or amass a fortune, but only in the service of mankind. If this principle is observed everywhere, all men would be equal, none would starve, and the world would be safe from many a sin. It is possible that this golden rule will never be observed by the whole world. Millions observe it in spite of themselves without understanding it. But their mind is working in a contrary direction so that they are unhappy themselves and their labor is not as fruitful as it should be. This state of things serves as an incentive to those who understand and seek to practice the rule. By rendering a willing obedience to it, they enjoy good health as well as perfect peace and develop their capacity for service. Tolstoy made a deep impression on my mind, and even in South Africa I began to observe the rule to the best of my ability. And ever since the ashram was founded, bread labor has been perhaps its most characteristic feature. In my opinion, the same principle has been set forth in the 3rd chapter of the Gita. I do not go so far as to say that the word yajna, sacrifice, there means body labor, but when the Gita says that rain comes from sacrifice, I think it indicates the necessity of bodily labor. The residue of sacrifice is the bread that we have won in the sweat of our brow. Laboring enough for one's food has been classed in the Gita as a yagna. Whoever eats more than is enough for sustaining the body is a thief, for most of us hardly perform labor enough to maintain themselves. I believe that a man has no right to receive anything more than his keep, and that everyone who labors is entitled to a living wage. This does not rule out the division of labor. The manufacture of everything needed to satisfy essential human wants involves bodily labor, so that labor in all essential occupations counts as bread labor. In an institution where body labor plays a prominent part, there are few servants. Drawing water, splitting firewood, cleaning and filling lamps with oil, sanitary service, sweeping the roads and houses, washing one's clothes, cooking, all these tasks must always be performed. Besides this, there are various activities carried on in the ashram as a result of and in order to help fulfillment of the observances, such as agriculture, dairying, weaving, carpentry, tanning, and the like, which must be attended to by many members of the ashram. All these activities may be deemed sufficient for keeping the observance of bread labor. But another essential feature of yajna sacrifice is the idea of serving others. And the ashram will perhaps be found wanting from this latter standpoint. The ashram ideal is to live to serve. In such an institution, there is no room for idleness or shirking duty, and everything should be done with right goodwill. If this were actually the case, the ashram ministry would be more fruitful than it is. But we are still very far from such a happy condition. Therefore, although in a sense every activity in the ashram is of the nature of yajna, it is compulsory for all to spin for at least 1 hour in the name of God incarnated as the poor, Daridra Narayana. During these hard times of a global pandemic, because of the lethal virus, we should honor the social worker Mahatma Gandhi, who cared for his fellow citizens during a plague epidemic. Let us finally share the lesson he drew from his personal experience. Gandhi wrote, "During a plague epidemic, the physician must not run away from his task, but instead attend to the patients even at the risk of infection. The priest must lead people from error to truth, even if they should kill him for it. The lawyer must ensure, even at the cost of his life, that justice prevails." Now, I would like to show you, this is the book of Tolstoy, published, you can say, by Tolstoy. It's called, I read it to you, The Suppressed Book of the Peasant Bondarev, Labor, the Divine Command, made known, augmented, and edited by Count Lev Tolstoy, author of the Kreutzer Sonata, and it was interdicted by the Tsar of Russia and published in Toronto 1890. That was in Canada. This is the first English edition of this book. 1890, it means Gandhi could have read this book as a student, perhaps. We don't know. And this is the first part. It's an essay of Tolstoy on bread labor, 1890, Labor and Bondarev's Theory by Count Lev Tolstoy. So, and in the end, I would like to refer to 3 exhibitions we published, and you might have a look at them because they are introducing the ideas of Ruskin and Tolstoy. And if you don't mind, I send you now the links in the chat, if you don't mind. Is that okay for you? So I will try to do that. It is not so difficult for me to do that. It's quickly done. and you find it under exhibitions on our website. So first I give you the link for the exhibitions on our website. This is this link. Here you find all the English language exhibitions on our website. And now I would like to give you the link, particularly first to the Ruskin Exhibition. It's the only exhibition on Ruskin as a social critic. You know, he was actually a historian for architecture in northern Italy, and then he asked himself who built all these great buildings, and then he became a social critic, educator, even influencing, inspiring Janusz Korczak, the pioneer of children's rights. And I show you now the link to the Ruskin Exhibition. This is the one. And then you find two exhibitions of Tolstoy on our exhibition site, one on the social critic Tolstoy, and one about Tolstoy and the Doukhobors, which is a essential exhibition to understand Tolstoy's support of the resistors. He nominated the Doukhobors for the first Nobel Peace Prize, and they did not get, as you know, Tolstoy did not get, the Doukhobors did not get, but these Doukhobors were a role model, a new era they wanted to create by burning the weapons in 1895 collectively. And so I want to give you first the Tolstoy exhibition link about the, I already did, and now the Doukhobor link, and then you have a good representation of the background of the Tolstoyan and Ruskinian background of Gandhi, and there should be another lecture on the influence of Henry David Thoreau on Mahatma Gandhi, but this would be another occasion. So thank you for your invitation. And I hope I could support your conference a bit.
It is a very excellent speech delivered by this person.
Murthy sir, you're not audible. Murthy sir, kindly unmute.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the great, delivery. I was really impressed by the way that our Katlov, highlighted many important events.
Sorry, I don't hear.
Very important message to be understood. Yeah, now it's okay. Are you hearing? Are you hearing? Hello.
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yes. I'm happy that Petrov came with so many loaded informations. Very highly informative presentation he made.
Hello, I cannot hear you. Sorry,
starting from Socrates.
Professor Krishna, I cannot hear
all
you.
Others are hearing. I don't know. Yeah, all others are hearing. Am I right?
Professor
Audible is
Moti.
okay? Hello. Hello, the organizer. Is it okay? Hello.
Sir, you're audible, sir. Murthy sir, you're audible.
I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but he is telling that I'm not audible.
Yes, sir.
I cannot hear you.
No, why? There is something wrong
You hear
with
us?
your Petrov?
Murthy sir, one of you, sir. நீங்க பேசுறது வந்து அவங்க
Yes,
சாருக்கு
okay.
வந்து கேட்கல போல இருக்கு சார். அதனால அவங்க
Yeah, sir.
சாருக்கு கேட்கல.
I still cannot
அவருக்கு
hear you.
அவர் சார் நேம் என்ன? சார் மூர்த்தி சார்.
That's all. Yes.
நீங்க கண்டினியூ பண்ணுங்க சார்.
Tell me, சொல்லுங்க.
கண்டினியூ பண்ணுங்க சார்.
Cannot hear you.
அவர் கேட்கலையா? அவர் கேட்கலையா? Yeah, something wrong there. Hello? Are you? Hello?
Hello.
Something wrong. Yes. We
I
are
cannot
hearing.
hear you.
Now, hello? What is happening? I don't know. Anyway, it is a great presentation. If anyone is interested to ask questions,
I
don't
cannot
know
hear
whether
you.
can reach him out. I don't know. Where is Dastagiri? Hello, Professor Dastagiri. Hello. Professor
So
Dastagiri.
we can take up some questions.
Sorry.
Gulamji? No, something's wrong. Yeah, for you it is not audible. Now is it audible? Night time. Hello. Okay. He has to rejoin, right? Hello. I think I am audible for
Yes,
all
sir.
of you.
Murthy sir, you are audible, sir. Pathol sir, you can.
So what is happening with what is happening with Professor Gulamji?
Sir, I think there is network issue.
Dastagiri.
சார் மூர்த்தி சார். நீங்க ஹெட்செட்
They
எடுத்து
should
மூர்த்தி
take the
சார்.
responsibility.
நீங்க ஹெட்செட் எடுத்துட்டு கொஞ்சம் பேசுங்களா சார்?
Yes.
ஒரு நிமிஷம். ஹெட்செட் ரிமூவ் பண்ணிட்டு டைரக்டா அப்படியே பேசுங்க சார், கேட்கும். அத போன்ல இருந்து
No,
போன்ல இருந்து remove பண்ணுங்க. போன்ல இருந்து remove பண்ணுங்க.
No, my system.
அப்படியே பேசுங்க சார், அப்படியே பேசுங்க. போன்ல இருந்து டைரக்டா பேசுங்க. எஸ் சார், கேக்குது சார். கரெக்டா இருக்கு. ஆடியபிள் கரெக்டா இருக்கு சார். சார் பேசுங்க.
அவர்க்கா?
கரெக்டா இருக்கு சார். நீங்க பேசுங்க. அப்படியே கையில எடுக்காம நீங்க அப்படியே பேசுங்க சார்.
No, mine is okay, but you know,
இல்ல நீங்க
other side.
அத ஃபிக்ஸ் பண்ணாதான் உங்களுக்கு வந்து உங்களுடைய வாய்ஸ் வந்து ரொம்ப கம்மியா இருக்கு சார்.
இத ஃபிக்ஸ் பண்ணவா? Now it's okay.
Yes sir, okay sir.
Clear. No, see, he has some technical problem there.
இப்போ நான் நீங்க பேசுங்க சார், பேசுங்க சார்.
Hello. So now I rejoined and I can hear you now, Professor Murthy. I just could not hear you all the time. Now I can hear you.
Now you are hearing.
Yes,
Hello.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. In
Yes,
fact,
I can hear you. Yes.
Some of the participants may like to ask questions. If they are interested to ask, let them ask questions. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Please
I
ask.
like to.
Yes.
Yeah, the session is open for any queries, clarifications, questions.
If it is there is no question, means you can just join the next tomorrow technical session. We can entertain. Hello.
Yeah. Yes. I like to thank you for your attention and.
So may I ask one question? Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Am I audible? Yeah. Sir, the idea of Swaraj and the idea of what we now reconceptualize as kind of sustainable development, we do find a lot of connectivity. We do find, but at the time when Gandhiji proposed these ideas, we were not experiencing whatever that the contemporary world is experiencing. In other words, the climate change or the global warming and other problems with the environment were non-existent at the time when actually Gandhiji lived, and when Gandhiji wrote and Gandhiji thought and Gandhiji spoke. All right. So there is something called the principle of precautionary principle, which we can find in Gandhian thinking. I would like to know more, because the precautionary principle basically it is of German origin. So I would like to know more about it. How do we perceive Gandhian thought in terms of the environmental challenges and climate change challenges, crisis, water crisis, and other environmental issues that we are facing today?
Yes, I would like to respond to you. The time when Gandhi acted and when these first civil rights movements were created, also the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People with W.E.B. Du Bois in the United States, and the forerunner of the African National Congress and Gandhi's organizations in South Africa. That was the time of genocides, massacres, wars, the two Boer Wars, the Bambata Rebellion, Maji Maji, the genocides of the Germans in Southwest Africa, of the French in Northwest Africa, in Cameroon, and so on. So these were turbulent times. It was also the times when actually the economic greed was on a high level, and human beings were instrumentalized in forms of semi-slavery. This is Gandhi's expression, because slavery was officially abolished, but there were kinds of semi-slavery, like the indentured labor system. So this was the time when Gandhi tried to find an alternative to violent revolution. And this was the time when he didn't want just to be a reformist, he wanted to bring about a real social change. And so he became a kind of interesting personality for the Indian independence struggle later. That was the time of his first meetings with Savarkar, also in London in 1909 at least, and then you have this Hind Swaraj as a political program. And this was criticizing civilization, not just influenced by Edward Carpenter, civilization, its cause and its cure, but also by mostly Ruskin, Tolstoy, and others, and criticizing professions like lawyers, doctors, and also the train system, transportation system, etc. So it was also relevant for ecology. If we reread Hind Swaraj with a kind of ecological perspective, then it is quite clear it is directed against the effects of industrialism.
Yes, you're right.
Yes, so this is what I wanted to tell you first. And the follower of these ideas was later Professor Ivan Illich. And we can learn a lot from his ideas about, we would say, self-restraint. There was one book, Tools for Conviviality, which I could recommend. So what not just E.F. Schumacher, but also Small is Beautiful, but also the followers now at Dartington Hall, etc. But also it was Ivan Illich, a very interesting educationist and a critic of modern civilization. And so we should go back to these interesting thinkers. And there's much more to say, but this was just my response to you first.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
It's a very excellent answer you have given.
Thank you. We try to shed some new light. It's important that there should be a new research on the origin of these four concepts of Gandhi: Satyagraha, Swaraj, Savodaya, and Satyagraha invented by Gandhi, these words, and then Swadeshi and Swaraj in his understanding. So we should get some new perspective, research perspective on the background and also the influences on Gandhi. And this is very important. So now we are so happy that we can read the 100 volumes of the collected works of Mahatma Gandhi in the Gandhi Heritage Portal as a good research basis. Also his 3 magazines, Indian Opinion and Young India and Harijan, that was so helpful now. And should be complemented, of course, but this is a wonderful research basis, though. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, in fact, it has been a fortune for us, though your talk has not been scheduled previously, but you have barged in to fill in the required space that was created because another resource person could not join us. But we are really lucky to have you, and thank you so much.
Thank you. I have only one request in the end. I would really like to receive the link of your video of this wonderful conference, because we can make use of it, and we will be very grateful. Thank you very much. Please send us.
We wish to have you for more programs as well, sir. Quite interesting.
Please, you can always invite me again. And thanks to President Guladapalli, I was happy to join you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very informative and interesting. Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Goodbye, sir.
Any other questions? Hello. Any other questions?
I think everybody is happy about the presentation. Everybody is happy about the presentation.
Yeah.
So let me take this opportunity to first of all thank our respected Dean and a very, very pleasant nodal officer of this 150th year celebration of Gandhiji. In fact, it is Professor Murthy who is really giving the deserving tribute to Mahatma in organizing various events and spreading the message. He is not just organizing events, but he is diffusing the true spirit of Mahatma Gandhi, which the youngsters have rather not much connected about, much they are not much they are not much told about and known about. But then now his entire vision and mission has been targeting the youth to provide this idea. In fact, as Gandhiji rightly said, the nature and environment that we have is not we have taken from our forefathers, but it is a loan that we have taken from our younger generation. And really, Professor Murthy is doing that great job of transmitting the vision of Gandhi into action. I am very much grateful to you, Professor, for taking all the lead, all the pains, all the responsibility and role of organizing this webinar. I am personally thankful to you, and I am thankful to this speaker also, who has made this session quite interesting and informative. Though the last moment arrangement he came in, but he did very well to provide us an enlightening thought about Gandhiji. Thank you so much, sir. So shall we meet tomorrow again for the next technical session? Professor Murthy can take over the session.
Meet tomorrow. Yeah, we will meet tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow 8 a.m. we will meet again. Please, participants, thanks for your patience listening and participating.
Okay.
Thanks for your participation. Please join at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
All the best.
Sir, tomorrow feedback will not share.
Hello, sir. Sir, feedback कल होगा. कल मिलेगा.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
कल
Thank you, sir.
फीडबैक फॉर्म मिल जाएगा कल और सर्टिफिकेट भी मिल जाएगा.
हाँ, sir. I am Jayant Kumar Pradhan from Odisha. Thank you, sir, so much.
Badhiya, badhiya, badhiya. Very nice.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Shilpa,
Yes, sir.
webinar is over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The webinar is over. We'll meet again at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
The today's session is over, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Dastagirji? Dr. Dastagir?